Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Excellent. Good evening, folks.
Good evening. Hey, Crystal, you'll pull up the agenda, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, we need
Sorry for the delay, everyone. I think there's been some disconnect on what was on Facebook. We're trying to get that resolved right now. So just bear with us. I think Mayor Hammond is working on getting his line as well. Mr. Mayor, are you able to connect using your computer audio? Try to unmute yourself, Troy. Let's see.
Unmuted.
Okay, that's
I'm out of
where.
practice. There you go. Sorry, guys. Couple weeks off, look what happens. Okay, well, a little late, but let's get it started. Let's call our meeting to order and have a pledge of allegiance. What do you think? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
All right, thank you for being patient for me there. A roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Here.
Trustee Jerome,
Here.
Trustee Kenny,
Present.
Trustee Knutson,
Here.
Trustee McDonald,
Here.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Here.
Mayor Hammond.
Here. Okay, any amendments to our agenda tonight? I take it that's a no. Any conflicts of interest? Okay, we're going to move on to,
Okay, I see somebody connecting there. Yeah,
Bob. All right. We're going to move on to the community comments on our non-agenda item. If anything's not in the action item or on the agenda, now's the time to talk about that. Individuals wishing to speak on other items that are non-action items this evening will need to raise their hand in the participation box now. Once they're called upon, please state your name and address for the record. And individuals will be given 3 minutes during the public comment. So we'll wait for staff to get back to us and tell us who's wanting to talk about a non-agenda item. This is not about the presentation. That will be after this.
Mayor Hammond, I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, then we're going to move on and give the fire department a chance to talk about the incident this weekend. Do we have a representative from the fire department that wants to do that, Kelly?
I believe Chief Nathy is on the line and able to speak.
Chief?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, sir.
Chief Nathy here. Chief Nathy here with the fire department, stepping in for Chief Green. He had some family emergency business to attend to this week. So in regards to the incident that we had over the weekend, I'm sure everybody's fairly well aware of the structure fire incident. And kind of the big ticket for us on that was all of our responders from Wellington were actually on another fire incident when this structure fire came out. They were up north fighting a grass fire that had homes and structures threatened to the tune of 12 acres. And they were just getting off of that fire when this additional house fire came in. So luckily for us, we have a really good, robust mutual aid agreement with our partners to the south in Poudre Fire Authority. And they were able to quickly respond and help us in our time of busyness and our time of need, and get to the situation and resolve it as best that as they could. I'm happy to field any additional questions in relation to the incident, or if you were looking for anything more specific.
No, I
on that.
wasn't, unless something comes up, Kelly, I wasn't really looking for that. I think you've done a good job of putting out the public notices on that. Let me know if there's a public comment that does come up at this one. I wanted to say real quick, I've never experienced a fire in town. It happened right around the corner from my house, and I just happened to be here at that time, and actually went over there to check on it myself as well, and stood in my perimeter where I was instructed to do. And first responders were there in full force from Fort Collins until Wellington showed, and lots of equipment, lots of sheriffs. They attacked that fire with full force. I was really pleased to see that. And I was really pleased to see that the family got out and no casualties happened. That was really lucky deal. As I understand it, one of the volunteer fire department people for Wellington were up on that fire 12 miles north. That was their house adjacent to the burning fire, and it took damage as well. I'm sure he would have liked to have been there too. However,
Correct.
you know, it's very good to see the family get out of there in good order, and then the full forces of the responders there. One thing I wanted to point out was another thing that stepped up that I haven't seen before that is really interesting and nice to see in our town, especially during this dystopian COVID time. Within the next day, within 24 hours, the neighbors on that road already had, responded and in place provisions for donations and for clothing, for provisions for money, things set up with the bank at First National, with the River of Life Church. And I was just amazed at how fast a motivated citizenry can get something done. And my hat's off to them. I visited with them that night after the fire, talked with them, and a couple of names that come to mind, just first names, are Cal, Monica, Will, Sean, Jessica, Sheila, Kim, Jennifer, all on that road. I really appreciate you stepping up and getting things in order for that family so they can get a car, transportation, get money rolling, and have a place to go. I did talk with Gabriel Gallegos, one of the sons there, and I actually was there when he was running to his house. And he said the family's doing well, and they're happy to be safe, and they're going to do okay, and they're going to recover, and we'll be there to help them. So I want to thank everybody that was involved with that. It was a new experience for me and for the family, and it's a very frightening thing to see. I'm glad we didn't have a 50-mile-an-hour wind, something like that. And just thank you very much to the Wellington Fire Department. The follow-up on Sunday, I spoke with Chief Green that evening as well. And the plan did work. The structure did suffer catastrophic damage, but again, no life lost. So thank you very much. If there was any public that wanted to weigh in, we could take a couple brief ones. I take it we don't have any. Anyway, thanks again. Appreciate it. Chief Nathan, thank you for sitting in.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. All right, so we're going to move on to our presentation. And the first presentation coming up is from our Interim Finance Director, Tyler Sexton. It's about our rate study, utility rate update. This is an information presentation. We will, however, after the presentation, hear from the board and have questions back and forth if so. But we will also hear from the public after the presentation has concluded. And individuals wishing to comment on the utility rate update will need to raise their hand in the Zoom participation box. And once called upon, please state your name and address for the record. And individuals will be limited to 3 minutes or so. And please lower your hand in the participation box when you have made your comment. And again, this is for information. As I understand it, we are going to have further public engagement meetings on this topic where we can have effective communication and dialogue and bounce ideas and get feedback. One survey, maybe a town hall sort of agenda, but we are bringing this to the public in more force after this. This is just the start. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Tyler Sexton for the presentation.
I have a quick question, Mayor Hammond, before we start. Did we get out the correct link for this meeting to people? Because the link that went out on our public agenda is incorrect. So the link that was published as the access to this meeting on our website and our public agenda is not to this meeting. This is a separate link. Did we get that correct link out to the public so they have access to this meeting?
I do not know that. I do not know that. I know I got on barely, but do we need to send out a new link?
Peter, if I could jump in real quick. Not sure what was going on with the technology. This is the link we use. We did post it on Facebook. I went into our website and also corrected that. I'm not sure. I got the same error message when I tried to start the meeting. So not sure, but I did a best attempt to repost it once again. So.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I do see a lot of other people on here that are part of the public, so they must have got the correct link, right?
That's good. I just wanted to make sure we had reposted it. Thank you. That's all.
All right, let's move on with the presentation. Tyler, please.
All right, so good afternoon, Mayor and Board of Trustees. Tyler Sexton, Interim Finance Director. I am presenting the Wellington Utility Rate Update. A little background, I presented a similar presentation on June 16th workshop that the board had additional questions and requests. The board requested additional figures assuming a fourth quarter implementation. The board requested 2 scenarios. One was a step-up approach. This allowed for the town to fall outside of fund balance policy. And the second scenario was that complied with fund balance policy. So next slide. Or do we have the presentation up right now? No.
No, Tyler, do you have your slides prepared for or do you need it pulled up in the packet?
That would probably help if we pulled up in the packet.
Okay, one moment.
Sorry about that.
Crystal, can you pull that up in the packet?
Yes, I'm pulling it up.
There we go. Guess that'll work for now.
Okay.
I'll just go next. Okay, there we go. So let's see. So this presentation is going to give you a recap on all the utility increases, the potential fourth quarter water rates, 4 different scenarios, communication timeline, and questions at the end. So on the right, you can see the rate recap. Woodard and Curran presented their utility rate recommendations on April 29th. They concluded water needed no change, stormwater needed a 12% increase, and water is still being evaluated. So next slide. There we go. So the board wanted to see if we were to implement a fourth quarter increase, how that would affect the 2021 increases by doing it in the 1 quarter earlier. This slide shows the relationship. As you can see, for every $5 in increase in the fourth quarter results in approximately $1.58 decrease in the 2021 rates. I have highlighted 3 scenarios that the board could implement. The first one is to maintain the current rates, which would require a 297% increase in 2021, resulting in a base rate of $74.94. The second scenario is an increase similar to in size of the first, would be 86%, followed by a 100% increase, resulting in a $69.83 base rate. The third is the largest increase of a 218% increase, followed by a much smaller increase of 3%, resulting in a $61.93 base rate. I've broken out each scenario in further detail in the next slide. So the slide on the right is the scenario 1. So I'd like to start by explaining some common themes that you will see in all the upcoming scenarios. For each scenario, you'll see a large increase in the first year and possibly second year, depending on the initial increase. In years 2023, the rates will begin to decline. This is due to capital projects. In 2020, 2021, and 2023, we have large capital projects anticipated for the water fund. Due to these large capital expenditures, it drives up the rates for those years. As we update, and then the capital projects begin to decrease in years 2023, 2024, and 2025. As we update our capital improvement plan, you can expect those numbers to change and possibly maintain the base rates or even increase depending on the amounts. So that said, I'll explain scenario 1 on here. Scenario 1, we maintain the current rate structure for 2020. This would require a significant increase in 2021 in order to comply with the fund balance policy. You're looking at a 297% increase for a base rate of $71.94 and an estimated total bill of $146.69. So next slide. Scenario 2, we implement an 86% increase to the base rate on October 1st to $35 or $35. That would increase users' total bill to $99.02, and then 100% increase in January 1st to $69.83, which would increase users' bill to $141.58. And then scenario 3, we implement a 218% increase, the base rate on October 1st to $60. That would increase users' bill to $124.02, and then a 3% increase on January 1st to $61.93, which would increase users' bill to $133.68. Next slide. So scenario 4 is a step approach. This scenario does not comply with the board's fund balance policy, and based on current numbers and projections, we would not comply until 2025. Again, these models do not account for potential upcoming capital improvements that most likely will occur once we update our current CIP. This scenario would require a 91% increase to the current base rate on October 1st to $36, and an estimated total bill of $100.02. On January 1st, we'd have to increase the rate another 25% to $45, with an estimated total bill of $116.75. This step approach continues until 2024, where we maintain a $65 base rate. So, and then the pros and the cons, this is where I just kind of break out my thoughts on each one. So scenario 1, the pros is that we maintain a current pay structure for 2020. And then after the initial 297% increase, users can expect a decrease going forward, and then maintains fund balance policy. The cons is that the 297% increase is the largest increase in 2021, and it's the largest base rate increase of all scenarios. And then scenario 2, it's a step-like structure. Users' max base rates will be least of all the scenarios. The $70.68 base rate is $4.26 less than scenario 1. And again, it maintains fund balance policy. The cons is user will experience 3 years of rate increases. 2 of the rates will be 100% increases. And then scenario 3, staff believes this is the best option. After the initial increase, less dramatic increases for 2021, increases is 3%, and then 2022 is only 18%. Users less impact by the second required rate increase of only 3%. Again, maintains fund balance policy. The cons is the second largest base rate increase of all scenarios. And then scenario 4 is a step-like structure. After initial jump, users will not experience more than a 25% increase. The cons, it does not comply with fund balance policy. Users will experience 3 years of rate increases. Uncertain future can result in fund balance reserves not recovering, and fund balance reserves will be the lowest of all scenarios at $2.5 million. And then next slide. So the communication timeline, staff has assembled a timeline in order to implement the October 1st new utility rates. August 1st, utility billing inserts will be sent out to all customers. We will also send this out through social media and also have them available at Town Hall, Annex, and Post Office. The survey will close August 24th, and the staff will compile the results. The results will be presented to the board on September 8th. On September 22nd, the board will approve resolutions to approve new utility rates that will go into effect October 1st. I didn't include, but we are also planning on doing a public outreach where we can discuss with the public kind of all the slides that have been presented to the board in the last few months, so they can get the full view of kind of where you guys gotten to this point. So we've already presented those presentations to you. It's just compiling and resubmitting for the public as well. And so with that, I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
I did have a question I had a couple of questions for you, Tyler. So the first question is, what happens if we don't change the rates at all?
So if we don't change the rates at all, we'll lose significant amount of funding. I presented a presentation about 3 presentations ago that by 2020, we would be in negative reserve fund balance. The fund would be underwater just due to the amount of losses that we'd sustain. So there's really no way we could do nothing at that point.
Okay, perfect. And then I know another question that I brought up in our work session was when we were looking at the losses we've been experiencing since 2013, we did realize a lot of it had to do with the price of raw water, but I think I identified some areas where it looked like we had other areas that we were losing money in our water fund that were not related to the price of raw water. Is that something you were able to get some answers on as to where, if there are some leaks where we are losing money in our water fund, that we could address those?
I looked through all the numbers. Basically, I looked back from 2013 to 2019 and kind of assembled just a quick operations budget and kind of looked at the numbers. And from what I've seen, you know, I pulled the water out, and what it looks like the 2 factors that kind of have fluctuate the fund is the fact that we've have a lot more capital expenditures, which turn into a depreciation item, and we've added administrative costs to this fund. So back in 2017, we added 15 new staff employees, and so that overhead allocations, and most of that was the Public Works Department. So very much tied to the fund. And so with that increase in staff, you see an increase in overhead, and we've slowly been doing our capital expenditures, and some of them were small enough that were depreciated, and some were just instantly written off. So we've been doing a lot of that, and so that kind of moves the fund a little bit. But again, I looked at the water, and it's a good portion of the operating budget. So that would be anything outside of that. We could go further into detail, but that's pretty much where the additional fees and costs are at.
Thank you, Tyler.
Go ahead, John. Are you done?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good for now, Troy.
Okay.
Hammond, thank you.
Tyler, what are the 2 big contributors to this cost increase?
The 2 big contributors are the loan, the new water treatment plant loan, and the water that the purchase price of the water.
And as we know, go ahead.
So, Mr. Sexton, Tim Whitehouse here. Can you briefly explain what the reserve fund policy is? This is stuff that we've kicked around quite a bit, but it's probably not a term that most folks would be familiar with. And also
Yes.
maybe define what an enterprise fund is, because the water fund is an enterprise fund, if you would,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the fund balance reserve policy is a policy that was established by the board, and the purpose is to maintain a certain fund balance in order to ensure long-term longevity of the fund. And so currently, the fund balance policy is 25% of revenues, 2 years of debt service, and 2 years of capital improvement plans. And so when you add all that up with our estimated revenues, it roughly comes out to a little over $4 million per year, based on capital projects and any new debt or however the revenues come in. And so we want to maintain a minimum of $4 million just to make sure that the fund is healthy and sustainable. And that's the purpose. And within the enterprise fund, within a government accounting, you have, government accounting, and then you have fiduciary accounting, and then enterprise funds. And so the enterprise funds are very similar in the aspect of a normal business. It has to run to make a profit. And so that's why these funds, they're required to make a profit in order to ensure longevity, because we can't subsidize these funds. And so they run very similar to a business, and any business, goes out there to make money and have a little bit to recoup costs. And so that's how this enterprise funds runs, and that's how it's supposed to run by the state mandate. So that's a little bit. I can explain more if anyone had additional questions, but that's kind of like a quick overview of how the enterprise funds run.
Mr. Sexton, excuse me, can you please share a little bit about what staff has discussed so far about what the community outreach will look like? I see the communication timeline on there, and you mentioned the communication survey and that there may be additional community outreach efforts. Can you talk to me a little bit more about some of the ideas that you guys are kicking around as staff relative to that?
Yeah, I mean, we recently just talked about the survey. We're trying to get send that out to everyone to see what their input is and respond to that. But also, you know, communication of how we've gotten to this point. Like I said, you know, when Woodard and Kern did their presentation, that was a good 2 months ago. So you guys have seen, you know, this thing grow to where we are now. And so I think we've also came with the idea of bringing that presentation back, all of them kind of wrapped into one, starting for as early as, you know, when's the last time we had utility rate increases, the water cost, how that's progressed, the loan process, how we got to there, and then operations within the fund, how those have been, you know, for the last 10 years, and then just the overall cash flow of the fund and how the lack of increasing the rates will negatively affect the cash flow. You guys have seen the numbers. John asked about those, you know, the cash flow if we do nothing, you know, and so just we plan on showing that, and then also, you know, anything above that, but that's pretty much what we've discussed for the time being. And we're open to any more suggestions that you guys are willing to have to make sure that we get full community support and communication on this.
Okay, so as I understand it, we're gonna get a survey out, and we're gonna get some questions back, and we're gonna get a response to those questions. And they're gonna, who knows what the questions might be? They could be alternate suggestions or just questions on how we got here. And we're gonna provide information on all those kinds of questions. Is that what I'm hearing?
I've looked at the draft survey, and they're kind of geared, but they're also kind of very general questions. But you know, we're still working through that right at this point. But hopefully, with the survey, will kind of give us the idea of where the town believes we should go with this fund and what they expect from us. So that's our hope, is that they, you know, and that they interact and let us know kind of their thoughts. So.
Well, it seems to me that we should do a real thorough job. And I know we talked about it. I know that we're probably informed a lot more than others because we've been working on it for a long time, but we need to do a real decent job of getting the information out that tells the public where these costs are coming from, how they've exponentially grown in the last 5 years, and how we have not kept up with the growth of those costs. And then share that with them in maybe in some sort of a presentation with the survey, just basic, and then we can get feedback on those kinds of questions, because there's probably people wondering, well, how did we get here? Why didn't we do something sooner? Where are we at? Why didn't this come about sooner? Those sorts of things. And there are answers to those, especially with the two big ones. Water treatment plant costs took a while to get there, and then the forecast cost and the cost of our water, which I don't think anybody could forecast the increases that we've seen in the last 5 years. And those are big reasons why we're here where we are today. And those need to be transmitted a little bit better to the public. So I would think that we would want to review that survey and kind of narrow that down a little bit to give them some information. And I think that that would shed some light on a lot of things. That's something we need to look at probably, huh? What do you think? Tyler, what do you think? Is that going to go with our motion?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with the survey, and I'm happy to explain kind of how we got here. I think that's, you know, going to be the huge impact is going back 10 years with all the data that we've collected and everything that we've worked so hard to get to this point. It tells a good story. Unfortunately, the end result isn't what we all anticipated, but I mean, with all the presentations we have assembled with, you know, the survey, I think we could really make a difference and kind of get everyone on board with kind of what's happening.
Yeah, I think we need to package up a little because we've done a lot of work. It's been there. I know it. We've seen it. We've watched it. Past administrators have seen it. We need to package up something for a little something for the common citizen here that isn't up to speed on all this, so they can actually quickly review that and understand it. I think that's something we need to work on together, and I think we can do that. I mean, these are facts, so we're not talking about forecast right now at this point. This is where we are and where we're headed, and we need to get that going as soon as possible. We got August 24th for the close of that. We ought to be able to get good results by then on questions that we can respond to. I think that would be prudent. Any other board members' suggestions on that?
This is Tim Whitehouse. I'm just reviewing the information from the June 16th meeting. There's actually quite a bit of, it shows the historical water rates. It shows the comparisons to other communities, what their base rates are and some of their tier rates. It shows that in the last 8 years, the water that we're buying has gone up over 1,200% in the last 8 years. And our fee structure has not accounted for that in any manner. But there's a lot of really, I just dug it up. There's a lot of really good information there.
No, I have it right here myself. This is something that, I mean, I know it's been made public, but we'll probably need to resend this out so people can see.
Trustee Whitehouse, for the record, would you, I'm sorry, Mayor Hammond, Trustee Whitehouse, would you please repeat those minutes for the community again, just again, referencing all of that information? I think that's really, really helpful. And
certainly, Trustee McDonald, I'm looking at it, it's Board of Trustees meeting, June 16th, 2020. So that was an actual in-person meeting, and that's where the utility rate follow-up discussion went. And there's a lot of really good information that was prepared by Tyler that I think explains some of it. It's pretty stark.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it says it all here, so we got to get this back out.
I just wanted to point one thing out.
Go ahead.
In that same document that Tim's talking about, or Trustee Whitehouse is talking about with comparable base rates to other communities, I think there's one glaring thing that I don't know that anybody's ever mentioned about those base rates. Those communities are not paying what we are paying for raw water. We are the only community that I'm aware of that is paying at the rate and, you know, with the contract that we have to get our water. We are the only ones that do that. So using other communities as a base rate to reference to, I think is not necessarily an actuality, because if you compare Fort Collins to Wellington, their base rate is going to be way different because they have water shares and they have reservoirs and they're getting their water in a completely different fashion than the way Wellington is. So that's something going forward to remember, that as we look at a base rate, we can't compare to anybody else. We are unique to our situation. Nobody else has this contract. Nobody else pays their raw water in the same fashion that we do. So, you know, I know I've heard a lot of comment about base rates and comparing them, and I think it's a disservice to let anybody believe that comparison between base rates of other communities in Wellington is going to give any type of real information, because it's not. There's no comparisons. It'd be like comparing a bowling ball to an orange. There is no comparison. So I just want to keep that in mind as we go forward, that those are numbers that don't really mean much of anything because we're not on the same page as everybody else. We don't get our water in the same fashion. So I just wanted to point that out to everybody going forward.
That's exactly right, Trustee Jerome. We do have a unique situation and arrangement how we get our water, and that's the cost of our water is predicated upon market rate of those shares. And that's a big portion of the increase. I don't know, I think it's about 40% to the reason why of the increase. The other increase, I believe, is due to the expansion of the water treatment plant. Rough numbers. But that's a good point. That's a real point. That's something that our staff is actually working on in the future, and we can come up with something different. And that's something that'll come up in the survey as well, that we'll have to explain that and what our plan is about all that. So I'm glad you brought that up. With that being said, I think that, does anyone else have any ideas with how to roll this out with our, what are we missing? Because I want to get this out to the public for good information and good feedback, and possibly any other options that we might have even overlooked.
Mayor Hammond, can you talk just real briefly about what the board is currently actively doing? We've heard a lot about what staff is doing relative to the water situation. Can you please maybe highlight, like, as a board, what we're doing actively to try and work through some of these water issues?
Okay, as the board, as I understand it, we have a committee set up. 3 trustees are on that committee, and have been monitoring and following up on 3 different approaches to our water situation. One is, and working in conjunction with our staff and engineering, because we're not alone and we're not experts. One is the engineering and design and cost of our water treatment expansion. Our board has been, and in the past board has even been involved with it as well. And we have started out with a new engineering process with our water treatment plant. We got to a certain level. The cost of that plant went way over budget than what we had forecasted, what we were coached on by our engineering firm. And about a year ago, we decided to switch gears and hire a different engineering firm to oversee that plan and that engineering, to look over the work that they've done and give us confidence in that engineering firm that we hired before. And since then, we've come up with a different move and a different design that we are going to unroll here soon. It's my hopes that it's about done. And it is more realistic to what our needs are, and the costs are more realistic to what we would pay. That's one approach that has to happen. That's been an ongoing process. We have to bring that to a close and get on with it. The other one is looking for, we've been studying redundant sources of water as well. That's a future work as well. There's a few of them out there. We've gone over them many times and in presentation, and that's a continuing effort. And there's our 2 different redundant sources. One is a redundant source within our own water system currently, which is North Booter, should anything happen to that water. Another redundant source is for the way off future, should we need to acquire additional water over and beyond what that expansion would do for us in population. Right now, the expansion that we would do over here would service a population of about 24,000 people. We have enough water to do that. We just can't treat it. So that's what the expansion of the plant will do. But if we see ourselves growing beyond that in the next 15, 20 years, this board will not be there for that, but the next board will. Hopefully we can lay the groundwork for additional water sources that are out there, and we've been through those. There's several of them. Some aren't very palatable to our town. Some may be partnering situations with other municipalities. I believe that in the next year or so, those options will come to avail a little bit easier. The other thing that we need to work on, and the communications have been ongoing with our water supplier, is the contract negotiation. If there is such a thing that we can do differently. As you know, our contract was written back in 1983. And back then it was a relatively great contract for the size of this town and the current and the market rates of the water. But in the last 5 years, no one can understand the forecast of the cost of the water. So there needs to be discussions and talks to see if there's something we can do or a different arrangement, possibly, if it's possible, to appease our water supplier, but also something that works for us. Need to be a win-win situation. Those are the 3 things that I see that the water committee will be engaged with, as well as our town staff. And other than that, our own infrastructure issues as well. But those are the three things. Nothing has changed there. We just got to keep the pressure on and keep moving. But the water treatment plant needs to be moving forward. Oh, is that answer? Did I miss anything?
No, thank you for providing an overview of the role of the board and what we're trying to actively do on our side to try and address some of these water issues. So
yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
And it's my intention to not get in the middle of that. We've got a lot of people working on it. We got very talented people on our board working on it, smart three of you. And I look forward to, I'm here for support to keep it going, but our staff and our administrator are involved as well. And I look forward to seeing the results come. I mean, we've been waiting for a while. It's been a pretty tricky situation. That is set back with the design and the cost overruns there. So we took a step back to do it right because it's quite a big ticket item. And I think we're going down the right path now with a different engineering company and a different design that will fit the budget that we put forward in the bond. And I feel a little bit more confident than the engineering firm that we had before. However, we still have work to do and we got to move forward and we need to keep the pressure up because, you know, it is time sensitive. All right, then. What else?
I do want to just relay that it is understood by our board the urgency of this concern for our, you know, the sustainability of Wellington and making sure that we have the water that we need and be able to, in the future, not have situations like this where potentially a drastic increase in rates might occur. So I do want to just explain that in a sense of, again, the urgency, but at the same time, recognize that there is a lot of compassion as well. So as we're going through this process and explaining this information, engaging the people of Wellington, I just want to assure you that we're taking all of this feedback that will occur during this engagement session to heart with the focus of course, taking care of our residents as representatives of the residents, as well as taking care of the future of Wellington. Passing on this issue is not an option for our board. We're committed to making sure that we do the best we can and, like Mayor Hammond said, solve this problem going forward. And then also continue to acknowledge these rates moving forward every year if necessary to see if any adjustments are made. So again, we don't find ourselves in a situation like we are now. So for the folks that are on the call, you guys are getting a very streamlined view of what is to come. So I really look forward to that engagement. And I just want you to know we're here to listen to you. So reach out to us as well. In addition to those survey methods, we're happy to hear and just advocate for those issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kenny. I would second that as well. Okay, I think the rest of the board is too. We are here to own this one and get this figured out and solved. I am encouraged that we are moving forward. It is a long process. Any other board members, would you like to comment on this?
I have a comment for Tyler. Yeah, actually, a general comment is, this is a very complex question that people have been wrestling with. It's we got to do something with it now. So Tyler, going back, can I go back to your scenario 2, scenario 3? Can you give, because the scenario 3, as you presented, was the staff recommendation. Is there a reason that one is chosen over, I understand the 4th scenario with the fund balance not meeting our current policies, but is there a reason that you staff felt that scenario 3 was more appropriate than scenario 2?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mr. Whitehouse. So when I looked at all the numbers, people tend to call in about very small increases. Typically every 3 months, the first 3 months of the year, we do the new sewer rates, and people can quickly tell, you know, if a $3 or $4 change increases. And so I felt that, you know, if you go from the two, I think it's, if we could go back, but 287 gets you to the $60. Then on 2021, January 1, it's only a 3% increase instead of, you know, an 86 to 100. So you're gonna, you know, kind of at the point where you just rip the Band-Aid off, and that's the rate, and then they expect, they can start budgeting their numbers based off the fact that next quarter, it's only going to be a 3% increase instead of doing another 100% increase base rate. We just felt that we would probably see a less call volume because some people probably wouldn't quite necessarily, anticipate or recognize a 3% increase compared to everyone would, recognize a 100% increase. That was our thoughts. We thought they would also, dial down on call volumes and, potentially upset customers. And so, it kind of gets them in where it's going to plan on going in, and it kind of stops at a certain amount where it's not breaking $70, So I felt it was a happy medium of all the options. I thought it was the less severe of all three, to be honest. If that, answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
And we'll get feedback from the surveys on what the people would, but we're going to get feedback on all that, no doubt. Any other board members want to continue this further on this time? Because this is about information. We're going to roll this out to the public. We're going to have a few more meetings on it for sure. I'm kind of interested in getting to the public comment, to be honest with you. I want to hear some of their feedback. And so we can take notes and take them with us. Not that we may not be able to answer every one of those tonight, but we're certainly going to listen to them and take notes with us and get this as part of our presentation and rollout. So any other board members?
I just to make one procedure comment. I was reading in the chat that at this point in the discussion, this is a discussion that is between the Board of Trustees members and town staff. I know people have had their hands raised from the public, and as soon as we finish this portion, it's your opportunity to chime in, and we listen and you talk.
Well, that's right. That's what we're doing. Okay, so why don't we move on to that if there's no objection.
Mr.
Kelly?
Mayor,
Yep.
we do have an individual listed as iPad in the participant box with his hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi there, this is Sherelle Teets. I'm suspecting I am the one that's listed as iPad. I apologize.
Go ahead, Sherelle.
So just a few of my questions, and I noticed a lot of them were popping up as I was writing them down in the chats. So I think my main concern, massive main concern, is with going into the fall and suggesting these rates being raised and looking at what COVID has done, what it is projected to do. As far as funding goes, a drastic price increase to a family that now has one parent staying at home because we don't have return to school orders. Do you think that doing a less severe scenario in the fall would assist these families in making it through as far as not large increases?
Okay, what's the other question?
My other question was, you were talking about the projected growth, Tyler was. What is he referring to that in regards to the next few years?
Okay. It's my intention to take notes here tonight, Sherelle, not answer everything, because we want to take our time and actually answer all these questions as much as possible. And the funding increase or decrease, that's some scenarios that we'll get feedback from. And that's a great point that you brought up. The projected growth that we're talking about, that's something that can be as well talked about in the survey and questions to be brought up. So if that's what you have tonight, I'd like to just take notes of those, and then we'll be getting back to you with proper responses.
I just have a few more, and I'm happy if you write them down and you're able to answer them later.
That's our mission. You bet.
So
I do want to acknowledge, though, that you brought up a point that I suspect that we'll be hearing in the surveys, specifically regarding the difficulties that people are going through with COVID and
Okay,
financial concerns. So I do.
no,
I
that's going to be part of it. Let's let Sherelle continue.
So does the town plan, I apologize for the background noise. Does the town plan to stifle building until we have all of this water issue addressed? And I guess when is the last time the towns purchased water shares and the cost of those? So, and then I think my final one is, with this expansion that you guys are speaking of, how many people, you said that, was it 25,000, I think you said, is what this will help serve. What year do you project that we will surpass that 25,000 and be back in the same situation again?
Okay, all good questions. Thank you, Sherelle. We're taking notes. We have another one that wants to go.
Hey, Sherelle, as well. Some of the topics that you did bring up are acknowledged, and items that we discussed in a previous meeting that are public knowledge. So we referenced those earlier, but I definitely want to get those to you.
And we're going to answer these questions in the survey, that kind of thing. Okay, thank you, Sherelle. Can we move on to our next public comment?
Mr. Mayor, we have no other hands raised at this time, but we do
don't.
have some comments in our chat box.
Okay, well, we can take notes of the comments and take them with us. As far as these questions that were asked here, we can get some answers done on these pretty quickly. We've talked about all these as well. But I'd like to do this in a professional format over the next month here and get these answered out and what we're going for in a bullet point situation. So if there's no one else with hands raised, yes?
I did reference that folks that did put their comments and provided the items for public record would have their questions read. So at minimum, could we please read those questions?
Yes, let's read the questions. Can we do that?
Mr. Mayor, I did have Amanda McGuinn. She just raised her hand. Amanda, if you'd like to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, Amanda McGuinn at 8979 Raging Bull Lane. And my question was in the comments. I know in the last meeting you guys had in this, you were going to have somebody go over the water contract that was currently in place and see if there was anything we can do there. And I was just wondering if that had been done and if anything had come of that.
I don't think we're prepared to talk about the water contract here tonight. But it is an ongoing subject with our staff and our board.
Mayor
Correct me
Hammond?
if I'm wrong, but I think we are preparing to review a water attorney to help us with this. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
I can speak to that. Yes, that's correct, Trustee Jerome. Our water task force is actively looking at that contract, and we're vetting an attorney, their firm, on Friday to get more information, and that's something that we'll be actively working on through the summer.
So hopefully that answers her question on as far as the contract and having somebody look at it. We're actively doing that. We needed to find that's a very specialized segment of law that we needed to find a specialized attorney to help us out with that. So hopefully that answers that part of your question.
Anything else, Amanda?
No, that was my only question.
Well, we're working on this subject very well. I think to enroll the contract right here would be pretty and involved. That require a meeting in itself. And that's coming, by the way. Okay, thank you very much then. Anyone else with their hand up?
Mr. Mayor, Sherelle has her hand up one more time.
I'm
All right,
sorry,
one
you
more.
guys, there's a lot of people in the chats that say they don't have the option to raise their hand, but would like to speak.
I'm not sure how to help with that. Any ideas, Kelly, or anyone?
Not being an IT expert myself, I'm not sure. Is Crystal, are you? You can do it if you, I believe you click on more on your icon. You can raise it that way. Anyone else have feedback?
That's correct.
Or if you, maybe if you do a reaction too, that's another suggestion somebody brought up. You're able to put reactions on your icon, so that might help as well.
Mr. Mayor, Mike Sullivan has raised his hand.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Mike Sullivan, 4173 Hayes Circle. If folks hit the participant list, it will allow you to raise your hand there in that box. But my question is, you're talking about the base rate. Is there going to be any change in the tiering structure and the percentages from one tier to another?
Tyler, you want to talk about that?
Yes, there will be an increase. We're looking at on the tiered structures. What are encouraged, suggested, recommended for 2021 would be a 25% in all volumetric increase. 2022 would be 25% to all the volumetric increases, and then 2023 would be a 5%. So that, again, that presentation was presented, I don't recall the exact date, but we can always bring, I plan on bringing those.
Yeah, we'll need to get that back to them. Because there's we have a tier 1, 2, and 3, don't we?
Correct. So every one of the tiers is going up 25% for the next 2 years, and then 5% in 2023.
So when you say going up 25%, you're talking from tier 1 to tier 2, there's going to be a 25% increase on top of the increase of the base rate.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, thanks.
Good question, sir. Thank you. We'll be explaining that too as we go.
Well, we probably should throw out there that that's the proposals that are out there. There's been no decision to raise any rates whatsoever. And we won't be doing that for a couple more months, but that is one of the scenarios that's being weighed as an option, correct?
That's exactly right. We're not making decisions tonight. And this is a fact-finding mission, and this is going to be a survey mission and a feedback from the town. All right, who else has their hand up?
Mr. Mayor, I don't see any other hands up at this time.
Well, all right then, let's move on, and should we read some comments?
I can go over those comments.
Let's read them. We may not be able to answer them, but let's make record of them so that we can use them in our presentation as we go forward and come back to them. I think that might be constructive. I don't want to lose the comments.
Okay.
There's a way to make a record of these comments, right?
Correct.
Okay, we need to do that. So let's go ahead and read them.
The first comment from Teresa Kenny. This shows it is based on 7,000 gallons. What if our usage is 14,000? What would that bill be?
Okay.
The next comment, Mike Sullivan, need to know the tier structure, what the tier structure is going to be.
Okay.
The next comment from Stephanie Owens Steiner. What have the developers been paying in water sewer rates per house over the last few years?
All right.
Cheryl Teets, when was the last time water rates were increased, and what is the average usage per household in Wellington?
Okay.
Cheryl Teets, average meaning average gallons per household monthly?
Okay.
I think we could quickly answer that one. I think more related to the last one. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong. The average household use about 7,000 gallons. Is that correct?
That's from what we've researched is roughly, town average. That's why we plug that into this model to kind of hope, if you are at 7, you're at the average, you're below, that's kind of how it works. So.
Thanks.
Stephanie Owens elaborated on her previous question about what have the developers been paying per house for water sewer the last few years, and have we been charging enough to help with the increase in infrastructure?
Okay.
This shows cost is based on usage of 7,000 gallons. What if our usage is 14,000 gallons a month? What would the cost be for the month on scenario 3?
All right.
Mike Sullivan, is there going to be an increase in the tiering structure percentages from tier 1 to tier 2?
All right.
Amanda McGuinn that spoke asked if we have looked over our water contract to see if there's any way to renegotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Jody Goodman, what is the new projected date for the opening of the water treatment plant?
Okay.
Stephanie Owens Steiner, will the survey allow residents to vote on which scenario will be the best for us?
Okay.
Jody Goodman, she is here to talk about bulk water, so we will.
We'll come to that later.
And Jody Goodman, what other options will the town pursue to handle the water issues with increased development and growth?
Okay. Any others?
Sherelle, will someone ask what the average household in gallons per month used?
Okay.
And what is the town doing with the bulk dispensing water machine? Agricultural residents rely on this for household water.
All right.
That is all the comments we have in the chat box so far.
Okay, good. I didn't answer any questions tonight because I wanted to actually give our staff time. This is a presentation. I wanted to give our staff time to take these back and actually give you a real good answer, written answer, and comprehensive answers. And that's what this whole process is about. Did I miss anything, Tyler, that you might be able to answer quickly in that list? We're going to talk about bulk water in a minute, but is if there's anything that we can answer real quickly. I mean, we already answered the average gallons is 7,000. Is there anything in that list that you saw that you could provide an answer on quickly that would be of comprehensive?
Not at this time, but we can address all those questions later.
Would you like to come back and do that a little so you can have time to answer those comprehensively? Is that what you like to do?
Yes, I think it's probably best that we work with staff and planning, and especially with, a lot of questions about the growth. So I think it's probably best that we reconvene with our leadership team and come back.
Okay.
And I would agree with that. I think what we can do as we prepare our survey, these are great questions people have raised, and ways to incorporate, in terms of voting or providing feedback back on each scenario. And then a lot of these questions, I think, will help staff be equipped as we enter into community feedback for a town hall. And so we'll keep those questions in mind as we present and prepare for that date to be determined shortly here. So I think we've heard those concerns, and we'll work to getting them addressed.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to give comprehensive answers for these things and use them to our survey, and I think it's a great way to go. I mean, we can sit here and bat them around, but we only have a small portion of the public that we need to reach here with this. So I think it's important for us to do this and do it quickly.
I'd also like to point out, someone private messaged me, can they see the complete list of Mr. Sexton's previous presentations? Yes, I do believe that's a great idea. We can work to get that online this week, maybe under the finance department page of all of his previous presentations, because he has provided incredibly comprehensive information over the last several months. So we will work to get our website up and going to provide kind of a one-stop shop of the information that's been provided up to this.
Yeah, look at your tab. It's over there.
Now let's get that done too. We're going to need that for our presentation anyway. All that stuff, everything we've done, including the future projections with the plant.
Mayor Hammond, something I am hearing, which is great, is just my subjective feedback at this point, is a lot of the questions and items that came up are things that we've kind of as a board been considering or brought up to. It makes me feel like we're really on track. So I'm really looking forward to getting more of that feedback. Also, I'd like to give a thank you to Tyler. As you guys see those presentations and the data that he's provided for us in the past and today, you'll see that we've been really running them through the ringer to try to find all the possible solutions. So at least we can start engaging the public to have a good idea of where we're at and where we're going and what the possibilities are. So I want to give him a big thank you for all that work. I know it's going to be more, but I do appreciate it.
We've got a good base to start with. We got good numbers. We've got facts. That's a good thing. That's a good start. So I think we're ready to move forward with comprehensive presentations and surveys, and to engage our public and get them up to speed with everything that we've been working on for the last 2 years. With that, if there's no other comments to read or anyone else to talk to, I'd like to exit this presentation and move on to our next agenda item.
There are no other comments or hands raised at this time.
Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you, folks. Thank you, citizens. Trust me and board, we are going to work with our staff and get this figured out and get all these answers to you, and it will be rolled out effectively. I appreciate your patience. This is not the way I would like to do this under this COVID situation. It's very impersonal and very unproductive, not as efficient as I'd like to have it, but we're doing the best we can with it, and we will be following up diligently. So I appreciate your patience. So let's move on to the consent agenda. One thing about our consent agenda tonight that's in there is there's a resolution to extend the approval of the conditional annexation for the Country Lane Acres. Is there anything that we need to discuss on that?
Mayor Hammond, if Mr. Byrd would be willing to just give us a brief overview on that situation for those members of the board who were not present for this, I would appreciate that, just so I have a little bit of information. As long as we can do that, I'm fine with it being on the consent agenda, just to get a little background.
You don't want to go into the plot plan and all that kind of thing, right, John? You're just
No. Just a brief. I did send some questions and thoughts to Mr. Byrd. If you could just address, is there any plans for development, and just kind of, is COVID the only cause for us having to delay this? And then are there any negative impacts on the town potentially if we do approve this?
Cody, can you weigh in on that quickly?
Good evening, this is Cody Byrd, Planning Director. Point of parliamentary procedure, I believe to remove something from the consent agenda does require a motion, a second, and a vote.
I don't think we're trying to remove it.
I'm sorry, I'll rephrase. I believe in order to discuss an item on the consent agenda requires a motion, a second, and a vote. I'm happy to provide the answers, but I'm trying to help you follow your board procedures.
Mr. Byrd, you are correct. Procedurally, that is the proper thing to do. So I would be in favor of, just for transparency purposes, I'll go ahead and make that motion that we remove that item from the consent agenda for discussion. Mayor Hammond, where would you, if there's a second, where would you think that would be best to insert it into the agenda?
The first thing on under action items.
Thank you.
We have a second.
I second.
I'll second it. Tim Whitehouse.
Okay, roll call.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
No.
Trustee Knudsen,
No.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes, sure. Okay. We're still on our consent agenda. Is there any other problems with our consent agenda? Okay, if they're not, I'd like to get a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee Knutson,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to our action items. And the first one we're going to talk about is those 3 points that Trustee Gator brought up for the extend the approval of the conditional annexation for Country Lane Acres. Cody, can you answer those for us?
Absolutely. So again, Cody Bird, Planning Director. I may have to have Mr. Gator repeat the questions in a minute, but I'll tackle the ones I can remember. The first question was, first in the background was that this is an extension proposed for another 180 days to allow time to complete the negotiations for the annexation agreement for this annexation. The questions that I can recall were related to COVID. That's the primary reason for this extension needed. There were some other family health issues involved in this. It's not my purview to discuss, but we have had some delays and we just needed some additional time to get this negotiation agreement completed. The other question, or another question, was whether there was a specific development proposal associated with this annexation. The town's annexation procedures, when we consider an annexation, they're required to provide a conceptual master plan for the property. The conceptual master plan for this proposed annexation included 44 single-family, low-density dwellings. This is at the southeast corner of town, or the southeast area of town. And the third question, can you remind me, Mr. Gator?
Yes, the third question, is there any negative impacts on the town if we do or don't approve this extension?
There are no negative impacts to approving the extension. The factors for annexation were considered as part of the annexation public hearing in January. The extension will just allow us time to complete the agreement negotiations and to get that recorded. Any other
Trustee
questions?
Gator? Did I answer the questions?
That did. The one other question, you said that we do have a conceptual master plan for those 44 proposed low density dwellings. Do we have a time frame that that's expected to do, or that's just at some point down the future?
Yeah, at this point, it's some point down the future. We don't have a proposed timeline from the owner just yet. At one point in the further distant past, he was pretty anxious to get going. And since that time, some of his business partners have changed and they've had to change their strategy. That's kind of common in land use development, but I have not heard a specific proposal for a timeline for start. At this point, there is just a desire to complete the annexation so we don't have to restart that entire set of procedures over again.
Okay, no further questions, and I have no problem approving this.
Okay, any other trustees want to comment on this item? Okay,
I would like
let's
to point out that with all the water issues that we're talking about, is it prudent to approve annexations for homes that could be built that could put more strain on our water sources and our ability to produce water to our citizens? We don't have a time frame for them to build houses. We don't really have a time frame when we're going to be able to produce more water. So I would suggest to think thoroughly and thoughtfully about this, because if we don't start acting soon on this stuff, we're going to be in real trouble. So,
Trustee Jerome, this is Brad March. One of the things that we have looked at putting in annexation agreements, which is part of the reason we want one, is that the town may not be able to serve the water requirements. At that point, probably the developer would be required to go to ELCO or one of the other district providers. And that's one of the reasons we want an annexation agreement.
Mr. Bird, when was this project originally submitted to begin the review process? Just so that we know how long this person has invested in this project so far.
So I might have to defer some of that to Mr. March. When this originally began, it was before my tenure here. There were a couple of delays in those procedures, and then it was resubmitted. At one point, this annexation was actually had gone through the hearing process and was approved, and there was a technical error in the legal description that prevented it from being completed. And so at that was about the point where I re-entered the scene, and we restarted that process and we corrected the legal description, as well as adding a second phase to that project that more wholly completed the annexation property instead of leaving a big hole. So I would suffice it to say it's been a number of years that this owner has invested in moving this project forward.
Anything else?
I had one more question for Mr. Bird. I apologize for not asking this earlier. Just to clarify, there would need to be a development agreement approved before any building could happen, correct? Just approving annexation does not give them permission to build homes on that property. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct. And the timing of the development agreement typically comes with approval of the plat for the subdivision.
Okay.
So there's a whole other review process involved before any building permits are issued.
Other board members? Okay, well, we put in the action item. Do we want us to open it to the public at this point?
I do have a comment. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I do agree with the idea for the water usage and the annexations and that consideration. And I think those are super valuable points and should be considered. This case where we're simply extending a deadline, we should not apply that, considering it had already been so that's something that I wanted to bring to the table. We are simply extending something that had been approved previously. That's what I wanted to bring to the table. Although I think the other points are very valid with the water usage, and we should acknowledge that for sure for future projects.
Trustee Kenny, I would suggest this probably applies to this one as well, in that we have not yet seen an annexation agreement, which is when we would usually do that. And so that'd be part of the annexation agreement. It also, frankly, would be part of the development agreement, which has been pointed out. I think we're probably also going to put it in there. You're going to have to go through the plat process. So I think this project is subject to review by the town from the standpoint of whether or not the town is capable or desirous of supplying water, and probably at least a statement saying the town may not be able or willing to.
Understood.
Sorry, go ahead, Rebecca. Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead, finish what you were saying.
I know that I experienced a lot in this project from the Planning Commission, so that's where my background comes from for this project. I know it's been a very long-term item since I've been on the Planning Commission. It's come up on more than one occasion. So want to make sure that we aren't dumping years of water concerns and problems on this one project, that we take a holistic approach with this and use those other tools that we have available, Brad, like you mentioned.
Okay, I think all we're doing is just extending this annexation process, and I don't think we're approving anything. Is that correct?
If you approve to extend the annexation process, you are essentially approving the process going forward. If we deny the extension, it stops right now. Then they have to start all over again.
Right.
I guess I look at it as a slippery slope. If we signal that we are willing to annex, that signals to people that we're willing to listen about more development. And I think that we, as a board, would be reckless to signal that we're open to more development when we're getting to the point where we can't sustain our own citizenry with, almost out of not being able to supply water. I mean, we're getting to that point. Okay. So we have to make a statement at some point, and we have to make moves at some point. So here's a perfect opportunity. Just my opinion.
No,
I didn't vote for this the first time, by the way.
That's a fair point. trustee Jerome. Fair point.
I do have a question though, or a comment. May I weigh in? I think
Absolutely.
if there's some discussion about limiting growth, which certainly came up at our, what are we going to do or how fast we want to grow? I think that needs to be set as a policy by staff and not as a one-off decision by the Board of Trustees. I think that we need to think about this and consider this before acting. The other issue is certainly we've got the mandatory watering restrictions going on, and that's because of the use on turf, where water usage increases approximately 150%. And while we're using pot water to water the grass, it's just, we have the water and the treatment capacity just can't water the lawns with it. It's really where we're running.
Okay.
Well, I think that we're kind of wandering into a slope of talking about a policy decision, and we really were just trying to pull something from consent to give the public some background on a current agenda item. So if it's okay, Mr. Hammond, or Mayor Hammond, can we move forward maybe with some public comment?
I'd like to move forward with that. Yeah, if anybody else, anything else they want to add real quick, I'd like to go to the public comment. Okay, let's take it to the public. Open it up at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment in the chat from Lowry Moyer. There are municipalities that require that the developer bring in the shares of water that they need. Milliken in particular requires 1 share per lot, and the use would be significantly lower than that. If we had a policy like that, we could use the overage to help sustain our town and fill those needs.
Anyone want to try to take a stab at answering our shares? And we're talking about asking our developers to bring.
I can take a shot
Mayor,
at it, Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
sorry, Mayor Hammond, I don't really necessarily think that there was a question there. It looks more just like a comment. So if Mr. Moyer is available to provide clarification as to whether or not this is an actual question or if it's just a comment, can we just kind of...
Fair point, but...
Mr. Mayor, this is Brad March. I would also suggest we do require, and our code requires, water shares be provided at the time of development.
Okay. Any other comment?
Again, are we getting? Oh,
I asked. It said the public now.
Sherelle commented, I think Mr. March made a statement that the town has not seen an updated annex at this time, so it could not be voted, correct?
No. There's an annexation agreement, which is a component of an annexation. And what happened with this project was the annexation was approved by the prior town board. But it was conditionally approved on the basis there be an annexation agreement. So if I understand the question correctly, the annexation agreement remains to be negotiated. The annexation the annexation does not need to be updated. It's been approved in its current form.
That's how I understand it as well. And I would also go on to include that the question tonight is simply approval of a timeline extension, not approval of the annexation agreement itself.
Another public comment?
That's all the comments at this time.
Let's bring it back to our board. Any final comments?
I do, Mayor Hammond. I think if there is indecision on the board or questions on exactly what this agreement entails, then the only way that we would be able to answer those questions is if the board, as it is provided the documentation that was initially provided for the approval for this agreement for that consideration. Since I don't know if that was how it was represented since it was on the consent agenda. So I just want to put that there. If potentially this might need to be tabled until we have a more thorough review.
I don't have a, it seems like we're trying to table it for another 180 days. I I myself, I've seen the when it came before it. I think I voted for it. I know Trustee Jerome voted against it. I'm understanding it. We're just voting to postpone it 180 days till we can get more information and let them do what they're doing. If we find out we have a problem with it and we vote it down, that's what I understand we're doing.
I understand that that's the same question, but I think other concerns outside of the timeline are the discussion that I'm hearing. And if those are the concerns, I think that this entire board should be provided the documentation for the initial approval, everything that was considered at that time as well.
If I could give a brief overview, what has occurred, as Mr. Byrd pointed out, was there has been an approval of the annexation. It was a conditional approval. So that's already done. When you do an annexation, there are 3 components, 2 of which are required for the annexation, one of which is you can enter into an annexation agreement. You don't have to. The annexation agreement is a benefit to the town. The other 2 components are the map and the annexation ordinance, both of which have to be recorded. When this annexation was approved, there was a 180-day period that was given to get to the annexation agreement. Because again, it's not required, but the town wants an annexation agreement to discuss to address many of the same issues that the board's addressed tonight. The town doesn't have to approve an agreement. And we have what the approval ordinance said was the approval of the annexation was conditional on a 180-day period in which we would enter into an annexation agreement, which again is optional. The town's requiring that. That needs to be consented to by both sides. If it's not consented to by both sides, then the annexation doesn't go forward. So the board has to approve the annexation agreement. We have said that the annexation meets all the needs of the community. We've met all the requirements of the annexation agreement, or the annexation itself, but we are requiring an agreement. That's the only thing we're doing. The board has an ability during the 180 days to say we're not comfortable with what staff has negotiated as an agreement itself. But unfortunately, what this annexation says is if the board doesn't grant this approval now, then we're in a position that the annexation is void and they have to start over. And that's very burdensome on, and it's 6 months from January, and that's very burdensome on the developer. That said, that's the reason we felt we ought to bring this ordinance in here, so we didn't have to hit both the developer and the staff, which has to go through a huge amount of time to put these annexations together. That's basically what you're voting on.
Yeah.
We are down to the 11th hour.
Yeah, so Mayor Hammond, I know I was one that asked this brought off, and again, I agree with the concerns about water, but at the same time, this was approved. I feel that we are being asked to grant an extension that is not due in failure to anything other than the situation that no one in this entire world foresaw that happened in the last 6 months. So regardless of whether or not I would have voted to approve this in its form originally, I think that we did say it was approved by the board. We did say that this could move forward, and something outside of the control of the developer or the town caused it not to. So for that reason, I will be voting to approve moving forward with allowing this extension.
Yeah, I think this is Trustee Whitehouse. I think we're getting off into the weeds a little bit about this is simply a procedural extension because there's a timeline that you have to, I believe, Mr. Marsh could correct me, but again, we're not voting about the merits of it. We're just voting to say, we're going to give these people another 6 months. I believe that's a correct summary of the conversation.
I think so. I'm ready to put it to a vote.
I move that we vote to approve the extension of the approval for conditional annex for Country Lane Acres.
I second.
Roll call.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
No.
Trustee Kenny,
Oh, one more time, Trustee Kinney. I didn't hear you. One more time.
Yes. Sorry,
Thank you.
Trustee Knutson,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay, move on to our next item.
Thank you.
2020 Old Town Street repair. This is Bob Gowing, I believe.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. This is Bob Gowing, Director of Public Works. I'm just going to start with a few brief comments. I want to briefly point out that the bid documents and the engineering plans that were prepared for this project were prepared in-house by our town engineers, more specifically Vince Gentry. This is a project that we typically would have farmed out to the consulting town engineer to the tune of about $40,000 or $50,000. So we're pretty proud of this effort. Vince has done a great job, so I'm just going to turn this over to him at this point. So take it away, Vince.
Good evening, board. This is Vincent Gentry. I'm engineering technician here with the town. And as Bob said, yeah, we did take over Old Town street repairs and some of the behind the scenes legwork for getting this moving forward. You can kind of see in the executive summary, hopefully we could bring that up. We, through the standard RFP process, we located our concrete consultants, our asphalt consultants, contractors, to move forward with this project. Just a little bit of brief history. The original study for the streets was done about 5 years ago by an outside consultant. This is just a continuation of that project. And we have also reached out to some material testings firms, and we've also reached out to, unfortunately, we have some fire hydrants that are in the way of some of these streets being repaired correctly and having safe passage for our residents. So there is an extra step involved with this one as well, and that's the fire hydrant replacement portion. It's actually pretty simple. If we could actually get to the plans, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so we can kind of explain a few things. Crystal, can you pull the plans up, please?
Let me get them up just a second.
While she's doing that, this is Bob Gowing again. I will elaborate a little bit on something Vince said. We combined a few other projects into this one because of COVID and the need to kind of be efficient in what we're doing, but also in the hope that we get better pricing for a slightly larger bid package. So there's some drainage fund work in here, some pan replacement and repair, the Old Town Streets project itself, and as Vince said, some fire hydrant replacement. Those were all kind of separate projects in the budget. So we've basically combined all those into this one package and come in significantly under budget as well.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. You know, real quick, while Vince is getting ready, what's the timeline on this list?
Let me grab my schedule. The tentative timeline right now is hopefully receiving approval, board approval tonight. We would give a notice of award and start the contracting process. And hopefully that would end by the end of July. We'd be under contract and we can start giving notice. We can start with the work, essentially. Concrete's going to take the longest. I'm looking at a little bit more than a month, maybe a work week more than a month. And then I believe asphalt usually goes pretty quick, usually a week or two.
All right, good enough, Vince. I won't take up more of your time. I see the maps up.
We've got the plans up. Also to the side there, you can see the big comparison list. We can get to that a little bit later, but these plans, we have certain things that we're looking at. Ruffian Way intersection, which I believe one of our trustees knows this intersection quite well. is in need of repair. Actually, two of our trustees know this intersection quite well. And we also have another intersection that's in disrepair, Viewpoint Drive intersection. If we could go to the next page.
Yep.
It's a pretty small set, so we can go through it pretty quick.
Yep.
So we've got some finishing some work here on 3rd Street, 3rd Street in Wilson, and that is by our Leaper Center. We had some work just north of that. We're just going to finish up that intersection and move through in south in a different timeline. We also have some work here by our park here at 4th and Cleveland, and that is actually going to bring in a few extra 100 feet of pedestrian crossing, so that's going to be quite well for us when we can start having more venues in the park again. We also have 4th Street, which is kind of the lion's share of our concrete work. We also had a few trees that we had to remove that were causing some pedestrian ADA issues. And we've also got, excuse me, let me back up. 4th Street runs from Grant to Wilson. So it's once again finishing up another portion of that area that we had worked on in the past. 5th Street is once again finishing us up, getting us up to Wellington Middle School. And what you see on the next page is typically what you do with these kind of projects. I'm sorry, we also have 6th Street in there, which needs a complete repave in certain areas and hopefully just a nice overlay in the others.
Sure.
And that is going to run from Harrison all the way up to just a little bit shy of Grant, right in front of one of our public works shops.
Okay.
And that's going to hopefully take care of some of the issues that we've been receiving some calls from residents of road failures in that area. So, and then the very last page of plans, which would be Adams Court and 3rd Street in Harrison. Oops, one page over, sorry. Those are details. Nobody really likes to look at the details. So if we've got Adams Court intersection here in 3rd Street and Harrison, typically you have an additional amount that you throw in there, and hopefully you're going to be able to get to work on one of these additionals. We just worked out with our pricing and with the responses that we've received from our contractors that we should be able to work this additional into this project without any undue stress to the budget.
Good.
Like I said, the next 2 pages are just construction details, which really aren't as exciting as pictures. So
no, that's good.
if we could go back to the bid comparison, which
No, what are we comparing?
we're comparing the people that submitted for these projects. And by people, I'm sorry, I mean the companies that submitted to be a participant in these projects for the town of Wellington. If we could maybe just go to 1 page so we can enlarge that, that would be a little bit easier. We had a pretty good turnout for companies. I think we'll probably go from the top down. Asphalt, we had quite a few people that were interested. We had 2 companies contribute their RFPs to the process.
Right.
For concrete, we had 7 people submit their RFPs to the process. I believe we had interest from 10 or 12 firms. These were just the firms that met the requirements and submitted for us. As far as materials testing, that was a smaller contract, so I reached out to firms that have done material testing in this area before and are quite cognizant of our specifications and what we require. And 3 of those have responded. And the same thing happened for the fire hydrant replacement project. We reached out to a good handful of firms and we had 3 respond.
Wow.
So,
Pretty expensive to replace a fire hydrant.
yes, it is.
You don't want to hit one of those.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You don't want to hit one of those.
No, you certainly don't. At this time, I would open up to any questions from the board. If you
Yeah,
have.
board members, any questions on the road project here?
I had a couple of questions. Well, one comment and to start. I mean, this is a very thorough presentation. It's very professional. I can't say I read both 62-page contracts for the service work. That was a little thick, but having the diagrams are really clear what's going on, and it just looks really, really good. And I appreciate seeing all this. I did have a question about Connell for asphalt. I know we are not required to take the lowest bid. And it looks like for the asphalt, they came in a little higher than the all pro pavement. Can you, do you just feel more comfortable with them? Can you explain that, please?
I can explain that choice for sure. One of the things that we had required of these firms is to give references. And I spent a good week calling all the references. And we got really good responses from Connell. We've got adequate responses for All Pro, but more importantly, All Pro has worked for the town in the past on 2 previous projects. So taking some of that prior experience that we've had with that consultant and some of the information that I received in the reference checks, this is also why we move forward with Connell.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Nice
Mr.
job on
Gentry,
that, Vince. Go ahead.
So I did have a question again to echo Trustee Whitehouse's comments. Very, very great job on putting this together. The question that I had is, I did notice that the asphalt bids both came in over the engineer's estimate. So I don't know if you could address just why, in the other projects we came in under, but in that project, why did we come over? And then within the concrete work, there is a significant difference between the low bid and the high bid. I don't know if you could address why there is that big of a difference between those as well.
I can maybe address that latter one, but as far as the engineer's estimate for the asphalt, asphalt has a lot more moving parts than a lowly civil servant like me really knows about. So they know their business quite a bit more. So quite honestly, I didn't have solid, accurate adjustment numbers for the asphalt bid. And as far as the spread for the concrete, I was a little bit confused about that until I started looking at some of the firms. A lot of those firms were farther south than I would have expected, like Longmont. So I don't know why their costs were quite as high as they could have. I have not dug into the unit cost as detailed as I would like to, but that's coming up here pretty soon, so I can get more accurate costs moving forward.
Anyone else? No? Well, you got great participation, Vince. So that's a good thing. Some people just want to make some people just don't understand what the competitive rate's going for. Things change. Good job on saving money, doing it in-house. That's a big deal. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, this
So, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I had one issue. If you look at the Terracon contract, and this is a contract that's below the Well, that's one the town is within the purchasing policies, I believe. But there is an indemnity clause in it, and there is a consequential damage clause, both of which I think we probably ought to look at. So I would suggest that the Terracon, if approved, be approved subject to town attorney and town administrator approval.
Well, did you pick Terracon, Vince?
Yes, I did. We
Well,
approved the contract in the past. We have seen that, especially on the Grand Street project. I will definitely bring that up to our Terracon representative.
yeah, go ahead. Someone else? Okay. Okay, Brad, thanks a lot. You're gonna follow up on that, Vince, with the indemnity
I will.
clause? Okay. If there's no other questions from board members, why don't we turn it over to the public? Okay, let's open it up to the public.
Mr. Mayor, I see no hands raised and no comments in the chat.
Okay, let's bring it back to the board. Our mission here tonight is to approve this. Hold on.
This is
You're
Bob
making a
Gowing
motion to
again.
approve, or is this just a presentation?
Sorry,
Yeah,
Bob.
we're requesting that you authorize staff to execute the contracts listed on
Okay.
the second page.
All right, good enough, good enough. I got it. All right. Would anyone like that motion to approve the contracts as is, or with the follow-up on the indemnification clauses?
I move that we approve the contracts for the 2020 Old Town Street repair, pending review of town attorney and town administrator to address the indemnity clauses.
I'll second.
I'll take a roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee Knutson,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to the next resolution 25-2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees appointing a town clerk. Brad.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Purpose of this is, as the board will recall, as referenced in the ordinance or the resolution, the board separated the positions of town administrator and clerk. The town has since hired Crystal as its town clerk. The positions are actually, according to that ordinance, separated as of August 1st. So all this does is appoint her as clerk effective as of the effective date of the ordinance.
Okay. Board members want to comment on any of this? No? All right, we'll take it to the public. Any public comment?
There are no hands raised and no public comment at this time.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Can I get a motion to approve resolution 25-2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees appointing a town clerk?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee Knutson,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Oh, yes, I did not hear the question.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to item 3, resolution 26-2020. A resolution amending the hours of outdoor watering. Staff, Brad, what are we doing now?
Well, the board at the last meeting requested that we modify the resolution that set outdoor watering requirements. This has been something that has been somewhat hurried.
You can cut through all that. What are we changing here?
Okay, what we are changing provisions, and we've got some additional changes as well that have been proposed.
Uh-huh.
changing, basically, watering times, watering, what can be watered in addition to sod, and putting some exceptions in there, particularly the notwithstanding. I have heard I've had a couple of requests. Board members apparently were concerned about issuances of summons, and wanted a warning before a summons was issued.
Okay.
I have some concern with that.
Why?
But it's probably workable. The reason for the concern is, for example, you show up, if the code enforcement officer shows up at the house and serves one party in the household with a warning, and then serves the second party in the household because the first isn't home on a second offense, has a summons been issued. We came up with some language that may be sufficient if that's what if the board does want a warning first. And I would suggest—
Warning the premises, not the person, aren't we?
Indeed. And so we put up the language that would be proposed in adding to the violation section, section 4 would be, quote, prior to issuance of any summons, comma, a warning must be issued to either the property owner or occupant, comma, which notice may be afforded by posting on the property.
Okay.
That would presumably resolve that if that's an issue of the board.
All right.
There also were concerns that were raised subsequently that watering, particularly for seniors, was difficult from 8 to 8. And so it was suggested that the PM watering time be moved from 8 PM to 7 PM, which is still in the cooler hours of the day, and we'd see less evaporation.
Okay.
So that would be in section 1. You would move to change the 8 PM to 7 PM. Also in subsection, the notwithstanding in subsection 1, you'd change it to 7 PM.
Okay.
And then in subsection 1 of the notwithstanding, it was intended, I gather, and this may need some further clarification, that watering of plants and gardens be hand watering that would be allowed in the notwithstanding, not just watering. So you couldn't have a sprinkler.
Yeah, I thought that was understood. Direct water.
And that may be, that's why we said, suggested at making that hand watering of.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd suggest adding hand to the notwithstanding in subsection 1. Those were the 3 changes were made.
All right.
Suggested in addition to the ordinance.
Good enough. Board members, what do you think about these changes? Anyone?
I think that it accommodates some of the concerns that many people had issued or have expressed regarding, the new sod, container plants, vegetable gardens. Because again, we're in the same issue because we have tomato plants and they're not going to go 3 days without. And we will handle them. So.
Right.
But I think those accommodations are reasonable, and I think the extension to the 7 PM is certainly a good choice.
Good. Anyone else?
Yes, I think that
I'm in favor of all these changes that we discussed. My question is, though, that the resolution that we have available doesn't include these changes.
Well, he said we're going to make a resolution pending these changes.
So we would just modify the resolution as provided to include these changes.
Yeah. Trustee Kenny, you understand that?
Yeah, in the future, though, if we're considering modification, see those available.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Some of these came out literally at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Right. In the future, it should be written in there. I know that, but we're trying to make changes and pass this and get it done.
Of course.
Okay. Trustee Gator.
Yes, I think this is good. This does address a lot of the concerns that were brought to the board's attention, and I do think it's a good idea that we do include that warning. I think that was something we wanted to have put in there, so I think it's good to have that included as well.
Right. Anyone else? Okay, we'll take it to the public at this point.
There is no public that has their hand raised, although Director of Planning Cody Bird does, and there's no comments in the chat box.
They're complaining that what?
Cody Bird has his hand raised, and there are no comments in the chat box.
Well, do we need to hear from, he's not public. Right?
He is not.
We'll bring it back to the board. Now Cody can talk.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Cody Bird, Planning Director. As I was reading through the resolution in the board packet and hearing one of Mr. Whitehouse's comments, not to misquote, but I believe Mr. Whitehouse said that his tomatoes wouldn't last 3 days without water. And I just want to point out that the current language in the resolution doesn't afford anything for the watering days. It simply adds 1 hour in the evening. And so if that is a concern, it has not been addressed in the current resolution language.
I thought it was understood that we were going to let people water these items as they need.
I think that the notwithstanding, Cody, for hand watering covers it.
Yeah.
I don't
Maybe that's
believe it
not
covers
correct.
the watering days. It still just quotes the time.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, it's still within the day. Okay. So
Well,
maybe
we want to
need
get out of the
that's
days.
fair.
We need to make sure that's clear, Brad.
Okay.
Well, Mayor
so-
Hammond, I have a
Yes.
quick question. I believe in previous meetings, we made it pretty clear on the record that the policy of the board and the direction given to staff regarding Mr. Lafferty's ability for enforcement, there has to be a little bit of room of flexibility in there.
That's right.
So I think with the hand watering, that was significantly discussed with the gardens. And I think that between the on-record policy with the board taking a stance regarding the enforcement portion and then making these adjustments to the resolution, I don't think that I appreciate Mr. Bird bringing those concerns to light, but I think that we've provided clarification through prior meetings on how the staff is supposed to handle that.
But Mr. Bird makes a valid point. The hand watering, as I understand it from the board, can occur on any day, notwithstanding the watering days, and we can make that clear as well.
Trustee McDonald, is that all right? We clear it up that way?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make that change too if it's acceptable to the
We
board.
need to clear that up. It needs to be cleared up. There's a lot of things there that aren't here. All right, then.
Yeah, I do. The final comment, I do think that whatever the policy is should be not open to interpretation. So I would suggest that clarifying that the hand watering can occur at whatever day, I guess.
As needed, right? Something like that, right? Needs to be cleared up.
So it's notwithstanding the watering days. I got it.
Yeah.
Mayor, if I might, as you might imagine, this is Bob Gowing again.
I know, Bob.
We've been looking at a lot of data as we've moved through these interesting times that we're in. And so we have prepared a couple of kind of an update on the current water production, the status of the current water demand and production. We could present that information now, or we could present it when we have the bulk water discussion later on. It is somewhat germane to this discussion right here. So I would offer to launch into that brief presentation right now, if you'd like.
Well,
Mayor Hammond, would you please clarify again what the agenda item is that we're addressing at the moment?
yeah. All right. We are amending the hours of outdoor watering. That's what we're doing. We are not at the presentation yet. That's what the resolution's for. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
I've already gone to the public.
How much longer do we intend on being under restrictions? Watering restrictions? How much
How
longer do we
long?
have left with the season, right? When does that expire? Did we,
Well, that hasn't changed. October 1st.
with the,
No.
Bob, based on the, or I'm sorry, Mr. Gowing, based on the minor modifications to this resolution, do you feel that there's significant enough information in that presentation that would cause us to make any changes to these minor modifications to this resolution?
No, I don't. I think it provides context, and certainly we're still in dangerous waters, to use yet another pun. And we did want to get the board fully informed about the current status of both water demand and water production. So wherever you think that fits, we could certainly defer that to the discussion about bulk water as well. But to answer your question, yeah, these are the same basic changes that went out in the flyer that we produced a week or two ago. And we're okay with these
Okay.
for now.
Yeah, Bob, we'll talk about your stuff at the bulk water.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, any other comments or questions? I think we kind of understand. Thanks for clearing that up, Trustee McDonald. Appreciate that.
Do you have a
Let me, just by way of Cody's comment, and I think this does say it, and I had to make it very clear.
Go ahead.
The hand watering of gardens and plants, container plants, is intended to be allowed, and as you said, I just want to make this very clear, is intended to be allowed any day of the week, but it's still during the hours of 7 p.m. and 8 a.m. Is that correct?
That's what it says. That's what I read.
Right.
Notwithstanding the foregoing, the following are allowed during the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m.
Right. As long as everybody understands, I just wanted to make it sure everybody that it was written correctly. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Okay.
But then the hours need to be switched from 7 p.m. to 8 a.m., correct?
Yeah.
7,
right.
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor Hammond, I believe I saw a notification for a special meeting for a liquor board review. Based on what Trustee Kinney had said earlier, I would echo the statement that I would much rather see a clean resolution than sit and have these discussions with all these changes and then count on all of these changes being captured. Can we get a clean version of this?
Cannot consider it at the next. We can't consider it the special meeting because it's less than 24 hours from this meeting.
Trustee Whitehouse, do you think that if this is delayed at all for any reason until we get a clean resolution, that there will be a significant impact to the community based on the feedback you've heard? Or do you think that it's in the best interest to just go ahead and roll on?
I think some of the changes seem to be fairly minor, the changing of the hours. I think I would like to see it cleaned up, but I don't think it's something we should table. I think staff has looked at this and they've already published some information regarding and sent that out. So I think this is sufficient as amended based on discussion points.
Point of information, I just want to see, I know that the agenda item says that we're just acknowledging the hours, but there are other changes in this resolution outside of the hours. Is that correct?
That's correct. We've got the written warning, which we discussed, and I gave you the language for that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, hold on a minute, just a minute, let me pull it up.
The days of watering.
The watering day, the watering was changed to 7 p.m., the written warning, and the hand watering in the container plants. And then we talked about, I'll clarify the fact that the other is allowed on all days, which I think it says, but we'll make sure. That was the issues.
Okay, a summary: hours, the warning, and the exceptions to the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Trustee Drome, you're good? No one?
Yep.
Okay. I do appreciate your comments, Trustee McDonald. I'd like to see a clean resolution next time too, Brad. We need to do a little better job on that, you know?
Yep.
All right, that being said, can I get a motion to approve as amended? Resolution number 26-2020, amending the hours of outdoor watering.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call.
Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee Knutson,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. I have 8:37. We are now going to leave our regular board meeting and enter the Liquor License Review Board. To do that, I'll need a roll call.
Aren't we doing this tomorrow?
We got to do this so we can move it tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Here.
Trustee Jerome,
Here.
Trustee Kenny,
Present.
Trustee Knutson,
Here.
Trustee McDonald,
Here.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Here.
Mayor Hammond.
Here. Okay, Brad, take us through it.
This is, as was pointed out, this is somewhat of a technicality. What we're trying to do is allow for additional space for licensed premises. The problem is that is not a legislative matter, but a quasi judicial matter, and therefore it has to be handled in an open meeting. The premises, however, were posted, and having posted it, you need to continue this meeting until tomorrow night, when I gather the trustees have agreed they would meet again for the sole purpose, short purpose of approving this as a quasi judicial matter in person. So you would postpone this, I think, to 4 o'clock tomorrow. Is that correct, Kelly?
That's
Okay.
correct, Brad.
Okay. So that's what we're doing. That's what you need to do. You need a motion to table it till the special meeting, 4 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay. Can I get a motion to table this meeting to 4 o'clock, special meeting tomorrow?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee Knutson,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. All right. We're going to exit our liquor board and resume our board meeting. Town administrator, under reports.
One moment and I'll pull up my screen here. Okay, the Board of Trustees received 9 different firms that put in for the town manager search. As you can see, the board also created a ranking sheet. So the top rated firm was Peckham McKenney with 105 total points from the board. My question for the board tonight is, are you okay proceeding with Peckham, with working on the contract negotiation with them, and then having that on the July 28th meeting?
Board members, what do you think? Get on
I'm
with this
comfortable
thing?
with it.
Sounds good to me.
Good.
I
I'm
would
good.
say proceed.
Trustee Gator?
I'm good with that.
Okay, let's go with it. That's a good company.
Sounds good. I'll give them a call tomorrow morning and let them know that they're the selected firm, assuming we can get the contract considered and approved on July 28th.
All right, thank you. Look forward to it. All right, on item 3, the bulk water station, Bob.
On the bulk water station, I think there's some folks that might be unsure of why that's down right now. So I did want to clearly state that the bulk water dispenser broke. It takes bills. It's got an ancient technology bill and quarter collector in it. And in fact, it's so old, there's only one vendor in the entire world that we can find that will provide it. We ordered that some number of weeks ago and have been tracking the progress on getting that part that's required for someone to put money in the dispenser. And the current information we have is that we should be getting it sometime this week. We hope that's true, but we'll see. So, you know, clearly there's a lot of folks that rely on this bulk water dispenser, and we've gotten a lot of feedback, great feedback on some folks out of town. I think there's one person in town that uses this bulk water for properties that's currently outside the town limits. But we did want to show you some data, and so I'm about to turn this over to Dave Meyer, who's kind of our data analyst, in the department, and he's put together some great graphs. They're a little bit detailed, so we hope you'll be patient, but I'm gonna turn it over to Dave and let him walk you through this real quick.
Okay, Dave Meyer here, staff engineer. I hope everybody can hear me okay, and you can see the graph up on your screen now. What we're looking at here is we wanted to show you some recent graphs on water production to bring a couple things to light, particularly in light of the topics that have been discussed so far. I'll try to be brief. So this graph shows total monthly water production from all three of our plants. That's the conventional, the micro, and the nano plant. In millions of gallons for each month. So the way you read this is like for October of 2019, our plants produced 28 million gallons in that month, and all the other bars are read the exact same way. I would like to mention that I listed the micro filtration plant on this graph, but that is not operated during the summer months because it will not treat taste and odor. So, and as indicated on the legend here, we're looking at the last 5 years of production data here, 2016 through 2020. And what's striking on this graph are the sharp increases in water production that started last year around August right here. So this medium blue line, 2019, we're starting to see increases in water production. There's October, November, December. Then as we move into 2020, which is illustrated with the red outline here, that increase continues, particularly sharply in May and June of this year. So this 41 million gallons in May is a distinct increase from the highest previous year, which was 28. That's roughly, if my math is correct here, 40% increase. Another sharp increase right here. So again, these numbers are representing increases in water demands. When water demand in town increases, water production goes up. So another way to look at this production is on the next chart here. This one's a little bit more illustrative in my opinion. What we're looking at here is cumulative production, which is summing up the monthly production month by month by month. And this is water we draw from North Poudre Reservoir number 3 that feeds into our conventional and the micro plant when we run that. And the values on this chart are in acre feet. So the thick blue line right here is representing an average over the last 4 years, 2016 through 2019. And the thickness, if you will, of this line is fairly representative of the data ranges covering those years. So December, for instance, shows total annual acre feet we withdrew from North Poudre Reservoir, averaging about 825 acre feet. Now that went up and down a little bit the last few years. I think last year was like 904 or something like that. But again, these numbers are just averages. Again, this is annual withdrawal from the reservoir that we are charged for at the end of the year. So the red line here shows us where we're at this year in 2020. And you can clearly see that we've been drawing a lot more water from the reservoir this year, and we are already far ahead of the trend over the last 4 years. Couple little thing going on here behind the scenes that we have to remember is that we were not operating our nano filtration plant the first part of this year because we were rehabbing the Wilson wells, if you remember. That came online again in June. So nevertheless, the increases we're showing here are substantial, even if you factor in the nano not running. So if you look at forecasting this 2020 data that we're seeing here in red to see what we might end up with in the end of the year, if you match the shape of this line, we are showing a forecast of over 1,000 acre feet this year, which is a record for us. I think last year we were at 900, as I mentioned, roughly about 900. So this is illustrating, a substantial increase in water that we withdrew from the reservoir, and we will probably end up withdrawing from the reservoir for this year to operate our conventional plant and later on this fall, our micro plant. Let me stop right there. I have one more quick graph I want to show you, but I know there was a lot I just shown. Are there any questions at this point? Or should I continue with the last graph and then open up for questions?
Yes, I do have a question specific to this graph. Looking at that jump in the acre feet, is this, and I don't know, Mr. Sexton or Mr. Myers, if you can speak to this, but is this going to have an impact on the concerns that we're already running into with the price of raw water? Is this going to cause a significant jump in that price of raw water, seeing how much we're going to be using by the end of the year?
The answer to that is yes. And as far as the specific dollar amounts, Tyler's going to have to deflect that over to Tyler to answer, because I don't quite understand yet how those numbers are calculated. But the short answer, Trustee Gator, is yes.
And just to add to this, it's not just the capacity of water production that we have, but this particular potential economic impact of the greatly increased water consumption since the beginning of the year that accelerated with COVID, that is causing us a great amount of concern. And we're not trying to alarm anybody, but we do need these conservation methods to be effective. We really do need that as a community. It's not staff, it's not the board, it's the whole community that has a vested interest in creating an effective water conservation effort here.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. That's a good segue into my final graph here. So this last graph you're looking at here shows a time period of this year, May 1st through, well, yesterday, July 13th. And this graph illustrates water production at our conventional plant. Okay, so these numbers are in terms of maximum day use at the plant or production at the plant. That is the highest number of production rate that we've seen on each one of these days. May 10th, we saw roughly 1.25 maximum production at the conventional plant. And that's how you would read this graph. The red line here indicates the capacity of the conventional plant. That's what it was designed for, which is 2 MGD. The blue line, again, is showing the actual maximum day numbers that plant was producing. And you could see several times over the last few months, our conventional water plant was producing more water than its rated capacity. That's okay for a little bit of a time period, an hour or two through the day. I think that's been happening, and DJ could speak more to that if we need to hear from him. But when you start doing it that often, like we're seeing here, and here, and running the plant at hyperdrive, things undoubtedly start to break, particularly when you have old equipment and old processes that have been aligned for decades. So it's a concern of ours to see the plant operating at its capacity or even above its capacity. So the other last thing this graph shows on the black dots here are when we enacted the various water restrictions. So the bulk water plant was shut down right here, this first black dot, May 28th, and you could see a subsequent drop in water production after that, and then it came back up again. The hydrant meters were pulled on June 5th. Again, another drop after we pulled those meters. The last dot is when the watering restrictions were posted online, June 15th, I believe. And you could start seeing a drop after we posted those restrictions. So these are indicating that the plant has been decreasing its production after those restrictions have come online. but then we're showing, you know, an increase shortly after that. The other way to look at this, or to ponder this chart, is what would this blue line look like if we had not enacted those restrictions? Would this blue line be charging up here a lot more than it is right now? And that's something that, you know, we can't answer. That's speculative, but that's something to ponder when you look at this chart. If those water restrictions have not been enacted, how would our plant have operated? One last point. I should note that the nano has been, this is just for the conventional plant. The nano plant has been screaming away near its capacity of 0.4 MGD when that came online, roughly June 1st. So we are running that plant as well. So that, you know, that's a situation. I know it's a bitter pill to swallow, but you know, water demand seems to be happening at a unsustainable level. Our plants have been keeping up, which is great news. DJ and team have been doing a great job, but they're struggling. And to push a plant like this, it's risky. It's risky. We've got more development coming online. New school in 2022, I believe. And our wastewater treatment plant expansion will probably come online earliest in 2024. So on a downer note, to end my presentation, this is kind of be the situation over the next 4 summers. On the upper note, to conclude, these water production number challenges go away after Labor Day. So it's only during the hot summer months when we operate under these max capacities and under these straining conditions. After Labor Day, life becomes good again, and we're okay. So with that, Bob, was there anything else that I missed that you wanted to add?
No, I did get a question text to me about some of the terminology here. So, but real quick, so the bulk water turned itself off in the sense that it wouldn't take bills. The hydrant meters, I think some folks might not know what those are. That's a meter that you basically screw onto a fire hydrant, and we use it to sell water generally to contractors. A site development such as the school or any of the site developments, they require quite a lot of water for soil compaction purposes. So we did pull those. Those had a pretty large impact. And of course, you can see that where the restrictions came on board, frankly, we wish that was a little bit more of a sustained impact as a result of those restrictions. But we're not seeing we're seeing some improvement, but not enough, not yet. So with that, as Dave said, we're happy to take any questions that you might have. I think this is just the facts about where we are right now. And I would repeat something Dave said. We haven't turned the microfiltration unit on, and we will do that if we need to, and that will impact taste and odor throughout the town. That's 0.36 MGD of capacity there. And if we have to turn that on, if some of these peaks extend to the point where we're losing water or lost water completely in the tanks, then we'll have to turn the MF on. So just kind of an update there. And again, any questions?
I have a question, Bob. I mean, looking at the capacities, when does CDPHE start looking at these numbers on the main plant and ask us what the heck we're doing with construction?
There's a couple different ways that we get regulated, but in general, it's more over a time duration. So these peaks, even though they're problematic from an operational point of view, they're not yet a problem from a permitting point of view, from a compliance point of view. But certainly, as Dave said, we're looking at several following summers, future summers, and that could become an issue in the future. So, and when you saw that cumulative volume graph, I think Trustee Gator picked up on it right away. That's also got economic implications. So We fully, we have a pretty good idea. There's many more people in Wellington during the day using water, so it's obviously a little bit of it's indoor water use, but frankly, from our analysis, the bulk of it is outdoor water use.
Mr. Gowing, so I believe that this presentation is supplemental to supporting decision-making relative to the bulk water station. Earlier in your presentation, you stated that the existing water station facility is not working. You have a part on order. That seems kind of like a Band-Aid fix. What is the long-term solution to the bulk water station? Is there technology out there to where we can, or do you have recommendations for increasing the rates on the bulk water station so that those users are paying their fair share of that water as well? So can you, do you have any information about that?
Yes, those are excellent questions. As part of the overall rate increase, we would be addressing fire hydrant meters and the bulk water dispenser as part of that. It hasn't really been highlighted up to this point because of the emphasis, rightly so, on the impact to actual homeowners and businesses locally. We have also looked at modern technology for the bulk water dispenser. We've gotten prices anywhere from around 60 to around 80 for a system that reads a card and a system where you can issue cards and do some other things like that. Basically a modern system, similar to what you would see down at Fort Collins. I think their system's a little bit old. So it is an expensive investment to upgrade the bulk water dispenser. We, in general, our sales through that in the past, last year, for instance, the bulk water sales totaled a little less than $18,000. And that's okay. That's some good revenue there.
Water.
I'm sorry?
For $18,000 for how much water?
For 2.85 million gallons. So the rate that we charge there is $6.25 per thousand. That's the same rate that we charge through the fire hydrant meters.
Which is not a fraction of what a homeowner pays per thousand.
Correct. And the main difference being the base rate. The base rate historically hasn't been really reflected in the bulk water sales or the fire hydrant sales.
Well, Bob, what I would be curious to see as a trustee is if we invested in that equipment and increased those rates so that those bulk water users are kind of like impact fees, development pays for itself. Well, if the bulk had quite a bit of outcry from the bulk water users that this is, not a good situation. And from what I'm understanding from some of the community members that have reached out to me relative to this, that they're willing to take that increase, just like our in-town residents are. They're willing to pay their way as well. So if we purchase updated equipment and increase the rates, what would that dollar figure look like? So I think, I'm sure that's information that you might have to take back and maybe follow up on, but I would be curious to know, like, how long would it take the bulk water station to pay itself off with the rates increase significantly to offset that technology improvement? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And you're really talking about kind of a business plan, a nonprofit style business plan. And we have done quite a bit of research into other bulk water dispensers and what they charge. We're very much on the low end of that. And so
why are we on the low end?
Because we haven't changed rates in many years.
Well, this is just the bulk water rate, though.
It's a rate that needs to be approved by the board, is my understanding.
It seems like a pretty easy increase to come up with.
It probably has something to do with the old technology too, Troy. I mean,
but fitting that many bills in there?
or making it, configuring it so it knows how much it needs to charge. You know, I
Okay.
don't
All
know
right,
anything about it, but I know the old dollar bill takers and the old soda machines were not easy to change how much, you know, a soda cost you. And it's basically
Yeah.
the same thing.
Well, I have a question. I mean, is the issue, I think the issue is, can we produce water to sell it through the bulk water to use that as a sales point, whether we get paid the appropriate amount of money or not, or whether can that be spared? And I don't know, I'm not sure what the answer to that question is. So
The graph doesn't support it very well. Not for a couple more months.
So, Mr. Gowing, this is Trustee Gator. I did have a question on this. Is, as I understand it, so obviously these are peak times of the 2 million MGD, is we do have different times throughout the day where we are running at that above capacity. But my understanding is that's not 24 hours a day. Would there be maybe an offset number of hours, so potentially later in the evening or early in the morning, that we could open the bulk water dispenser? It won't be as convenient to those that need it, but that it would not impact those peak hours. Would that be something we could do?
Yes, we've looked at that, and in general, there's 2 peaks a day, and one roughly in the morning when folks are getting ready to go out into the world, and one towards the evening where they're coming back. That pattern has changed dramatically with COVID. The peaks are actually higher, but they're also much broader because there are more people here during the day. So yeah, we put together some data on that diurnal curve, is what that's called, and we would suggest that if we bring the bulk water station back online, that it be open during off-peak hours. And we would also suggest, well, let me back up. So the way the water production system works, we're producing this water. It gets stored temporarily in the 2 water tanks up at the main plant. It gets fed through the pipes all the way through town. There's storage in the pipes and in the tank, and that tends to buffer the peak production from peak demand a little bit. But in general, we don't really have enough storage to do any genuine mitigation of peak demand with storage, because so much of it is needed for emergency purposes, which we just learned on Sunday, particularly fires. So the time frame would likely be something, frankly, the best time would be at night and or early morning hours. And we know that this is not going to be very convenient for a lot of folks that use it. But in general, it would kind of mirror the watering timelines. We ask folks to do watering during the night because that's the load demand portion of the 24-hour cycle. And there could be some limited time frames during the day that it could be open. But you see from this graph, another thing this graph illustrates is just how dynamic the situation is. There's all kind of factors that really can't be calculated in advance that determine what the demand is and therefore what we have to produce. Temperatures, extended hot days, precipitation, wind, on and on, just people's habits. Clearly people's habits have changed tremendously because of COVID. And I wouldn't say that they've really settled down into a particular pattern yet. So yes, the short answer is that we do think we could do that, but it probably wouldn't be the most convenient hours in the world. And when we get that part in, again, we hope that's coming in this week, we should be able to bring it online, but our recommendation is that that be limited to late evening and early morning hours.
What would be wrong with that? It's more convenient than going into Fort Collins.
I agree. I think that, I don't know, I think we have some folks out there that might have an opinion on it, but the bottom line is we really can't afford to have extra draw during those peak times, and you see what it looks like on this graph, and the
Yeah.
same applies to any non-indoor use water. It all falls into the same category, and that is frankly priority 2 compared to getting safe, adequate drinking water to all of our actual customers in town.
Yeah, and also one thing to add, to make sure that we have adequate storage in our tank for emergency situations. Line breaks, pumps go down, and also like in light of recent events, fire, that's going to be drawn from our tank. So I'm sure TJ operators, we don't want to drop that tank very low, especially during high peaks. And anything we could do to mitigate that would be helpful, as Bob is suggesting.
I have a question. The micro that's not running out at the main plant, how long does it take? You don't just flip a switch. How long does it take to bring that online?
It's a matter of hours. It's fairly quick. We've already got it prepped. DJ's got it ready to go, and that's our backup plan. And we don't want to pull the trigger on that because we know that that's going to decrease the quality of our product.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Gowing, this is Trustee Gator. I do have a question. Looking at, as you've mentioned, this is not something that will strictly be confined to this summer. And I know that we're in the process of addressing the water treatment plant. That is a longer term project. Is it possible, and I don't know, is it possible for us to in some way increase our storage capacity to maybe help offset some of that a little bit more as a short-term solution while we're waiting for that point when we're able to bring the new upgrades to the water plant online?
That's a good question, and the easiest way to answer that is to consider that at peak, which are the problem areas, we produce up to 2.3 million gallons a day without the microfiltration unit. Technically we have 3 million gallons of storage, but most of that is reserved for emergency purposes. But you can see that adding an additional 1 million gallon tank, that's less than half a day of demand. So it's very difficult, and storage is almost always reserved for emergency purposes and for basically operational needs. There's times when we have to, the plant has filters in it that we have to backwash and keep clean based on the quality of the water we're getting in. The frequency of that changes, but we can't produce water during that time. So there are times when the plant basically turns down in order for our operators to do all the various things that have to be done to keep it humming along. So the short answer, Trustee Gator, is that storage, while it might be helpful, would be fairly insignificant in terms of really addressing this problem. We are looking at additional storage as part of the new project, and by the way, we're going to bring that to the work session next week and give you guys a full update on the status of that and the wastewater treatment master plan. And you'll see that storage tank in there. It's possible that we could accelerate that, but frankly, it's of limited benefit when it comes to this kind of sustained demand problem that we have.
Mr. Gowing, what we're talking, also Mr. Meyer, that talked about running an older plant at closer to its maximum capacity. What are the points of failure? Is that a pump? Is it piping? Is it, if it's a pump, is it something we have backups on?
There's a series of pumps, generally pumps. There's high horsepower pumps that pump from the reservoir to the head of the plant. There's some pumps internal to the plant, and then the finished water is pumped up to the tanks. So those are all big heavy duty pumps, and we've done what we can in terms of getting some redundant equipment We've upgraded several of those in the last year and a half, 2 years, and there's some that we've taken care of this year. But we're still talking about a fairly old plant design, and there are a lot of moving parts. So other than the pumps, which are kind of deal killers in terms if they go down, if numerous pumps go down, there's just an incredible number of sensors and all kinds of things involved in the process itself. Those don't necessarily create kind of a catastrophic style failure, but they're all fairly old. We've had DJ's implemented a very extensive program of upgrading those as needed to keep us online, but the system as a whole is, I'm not going to say it's fragile, I don't want to overstate the case, but it requires constant repair, and in addition to the operation that's required just to produce water.
Filter bed media has also been a challenge lately for DJ. That's seen its better days.
Yeah, the filter media is, there are some kind of deferred maintenance issues that we're dealing with, maintenance that should have happened 10 years ago that we're cramming into the last year and a half. And the filter media, unfortunately, is one that we really can't repair without taking the plant down. So there are some things in here that that cause some concern to the operators in particular. But you know, Dave's point is really on point, that sustained effort, sustained production at max is not good for any system, and not good for this one in particular.
So I have another question. I don't know if Bob, this is a question for you, or Mr. March, if you potentially would know the answer. And I don't know the answer to this, but as a municipality providing water with our own treatment plant and everything like that, do we have any obligations from a legal standpoint or otherwise to one group or another group, or do we have obligations, and who are those two first and foremost?
Well, this is Brad March. Obviously, your primary obligations are to your tap holders, who are residents of the community. That, you know, that said, that's who you are expected to deliver water to, and who's bought, you know, the ability to receive water. Certainly, there are other recipients of services that you can elect to serve as well, but if someone's bought a tap, they probably have a heightened expectation. That answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So with that, we're comfortable when we get the part, turning the bulk water back on with reduced hours, and with the understanding that if we've gotten into a situation where we need to reduce demand, the bulk water station would be near the top of the list in terms of things that would actually get turned off at that point. And frankly, there's a policy decision there to be made too.
Yeah.
Do we turn on the micro, knowing it's going to impact taste and odor for everybody who drinks our water, not so much the people that put our water on the ground.
But Bob, you said that we're going to put that bulk water at different hours, not during peak demand.
Correct, but we're in mid-July. We still got August coming our way.
Yeah.
And if there's something we need to do, we're going to do it in a matter of an hour.
Yeah, but
So,
bulk water is not going to be running during the day.
that's true, but as I mentioned earlier, our system is, the peaks are important, but there is some storage to buffer that. So
Yeah.
when we get at peak, we're draining the tanks. In those troughs, we're filling the tanks back up. If we can't fill the tanks back up fast enough during the troughs, the off-peak hours, then we start to run into problems.
So you're filling them up at night, what you're saying?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, exactly.
okay. You might not be able to turn it on. I don't.
But we feel like right now we're in a place where we can do that.
Why can't you go and then if you you know, if it doesn't work, you turn it off when you see it when you see it, you're encroaching upon the peak. It's just the way it is.
That's exactly right. We're just wanting that to be clear, needing that to be clear. And folks that are depending on this, you know, should have a backup plan for their bulk water.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other stations around, and I understand they're farther away and
Talking a
most of
couple
them
of
more
months.
expensive.
We're talking a couple of months.
Right. That's
and then
right.
we're out of the woods here.
Well, and first and foremost, our obligation is to our tap holders. I mean, these are fees that have been collected over the years, and these are people that live in the city limits that have been buying water from us for years, and that is our first responsibility and first priority. Folks that have never paid a tap fee, don't pay any of the other extra stuff, they just go and use that bulk water machine, they're not our top priority, unfortunately. You know, it's not easy to say, but the reality is the residents that live inside the town of Wellington that are serviced to their house by the water are the first and foremost priority. Everything else is secondary. And if, in order to make sure that we don't lose water service to the entire town, we have to shut a bulk dispenser down, so be it. You know, it's kind of unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And I'd like to also point out, based off of this May 1st through July 14th, peaks and valleys, that's this year. Next year, it looks much worse. And the reason I say that is all the new houses that are under construction right now that haven't turned on their water and don't have residents in it. So, you know, as bad as it looks right now and how bad it will look as we look at it in retrospect a few months down the road, we need to be prepared for next year is going to look even worse. And then the next year, even worse than that, if we continue at the rate we're at. I'm going to renew my position about we need to seriously consider curbing home building until we have a water plant that can maintain and produce enough water. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a topic for another night, I think, on that. That's a serious topic.
I do have a comment regarding the bulk water. Is there a way that we can discourage construction use of this when it is opened? Because it could be used more than ever based on the construction needs since the meters are still off.
That is a great point, Trustee Kenny, and that's occurred to us as well. Nighttime hours would largely take care of that, but we're going to be watching that thing like a hawk, and there will be no construction water available for construction purposes anytime soon.
Okay.
So that's going to happen in September, October.
Yes, I would understand it. What I think I hear the board saying, but I want to clarify it, is that the staff has leave to reopen the bulk watering facility, but if they feel a need to shut it down in staff's discretion, they can do so without coming to the board. Is that correct?
I think this is not, it's not.
But I think that we need to like put some like sort of range on that. Like if the bulk water station is going to be shut down for longer than 14 days, I think that's something that I would like to know about. I completely agree that with Trustee Jerome that our first priority is our tap payers, but we can't discount our rural community either. I mean, for people not to have fresh drinking water, that's a critical issue. But I do completely agree that our first and foremost priority is to deal with our residents. But I don't want it just completely open. Like I said, I would be more comfortable agreeing to something like that. But if the bulk water station is going to be shut down for an extended period of time, I would like to know why, and I'd like to know when it's going to go back online.
So obviously the board should be advised at the next upcoming board meeting if it's shut down.
Well, hopefully we would receive
Yeah.
some sort of notification from staff through email
Fair enough.
prior to that.
Fair enough.
Well, of course, we need notification if the bulk water's not running, right?
Okay.
We gotta be able to let them know somehow.
Great.
Okay.
So, and I would agree with Trustee McDonald. Yes, I 100% agree. Our first and foremost responsibility is to the tap holders. But at the same time, I do not feel that we can discount those who are in the community around us. And I understand that they do have other options, but that doesn't mean that if we have a way to make it work, we shouldn't push for that. So I am glad to hear that. And just, I mean, from my perspective, looking at, from my understanding, a usage of 2.85 MGD for the entirety of last year is what I understood. That's equivalent to 2 days water supply. Now I understand we may reach points where we may need to make some adjustments, but we're talking about a couple of days supply that was utilized over the course of an entire year. So I don't feel at this point that we have to go and say we need to shut that down. And I understand that if we reach that point and we have to do that, then I understand that. But I don't see that we're at that point yet, seeing the levels of usage that we've seen from that.
All right, I think that the engineers and the operators who aren't monitoring this thing need to have the latitude to shut this plant, to shut that bulk water down if they need to.
I think that's an operational decision, and
I
then
really do. I mean, we're not watching it like they are.
yeah.
It's going to be shut down for
but
a
I do
period of time. We need to know.
I do want to make a blanket statement that I would prefer to have taste and odor concerns. I welcome that if the trade-off would be that the bulk water station could be open for more users. I am okay with taste and odor issues to ensure that we have a more sustainable and welcoming water situation, personally.
I'm thinking you probably better ask the rest of the residents of the town of Wellington if they're willing to sacrifice taste and water for a bulk plant.
And not just that, but for the other peaks that we're considering here for that maximum, capacity as well, that could also acknowledge those things. So, but I agree. Like I said, that is my personal opinion. But I do want to make sure that's known.
I don't know that I know we got opinions on it, but I still think this needs to be left to the engineers and the operators to monitor the systems. I mean, they're going to be the ones determining whether or not they can safely turn it on or not.
I agree. We have to trust completely in that.
And if they can't, they can't. We're talking 2 more months. I know it's a problem. I understand that, but
Well, I think that Bob has
if
offered
Bob's
some,
capable and feels good about turning it on, he'll turn it on.
and I think that Bob has also offered some pretty decent solutions with the having it open and available during the off-peak hours.
Yep.
And maybe committing to looking into providing a better sustainable system in the future, better equipment, and then additionally increasing that utility rate for those users so that it's equitable to what they're receiving. I don't want our tap users to be paying a premium price for their drinking water and then the bulk water users to not be meeting that same level of expectation. So if we're providing them with drinking water, then they should be paying the same fees that our tap fee payers are.
I think that goes without saying.
Yeah, so that's my biggest thing is I'm all for the bulk water station if we can keep it within the range of the treatment plant production and the rates are equivalent to what our tap fee payers are paying.
Well, there is another issue about upgrading the bulk water dispenser. When this whole pandemic came around, we looked at reducing our total expenditures for this fiscal year by 15%, and I believe that expense of updating a newer bulk water system was one of the things I think they zeroed out. I don't know if it's changed enough at this point to reconsider that certainly was on the chopping block earlier.
All right. Well, I don't think we're upgrading it right now. We're just getting the part to get it running. What do we want to do? I mean, turn this over to Bob and move on for now? I mean, it seems like that's what we're doing.
Well, Trustee Hammond, can you maybe clarify the points of the board of the expectation that we set this evening? Like, what are the direct bullet points that we want Bob to take into consideration?
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. I think we're telling Bob to run the bulk water station at his discretion at the hours of the usage that make the most sense so that we don't max out our production at the water treatment plant. And should the need to shut it down, that's up to him, and he'll have to put out notice, effective notice. We'll have to, somebody, or our media will put out effective notice. And that's just about the best we can do for the next 2 months. Then we're out of the woods. I mean, is that what I'm hearing? And then we're going to charge effective rate. It hasn't been charged, the rate hasn't been charged effective for, I don't know, forever. So I think that's what I'm hearing.
Well, I had a question how easy is it to recalibrate the rates on the payment mechanism on this machine, being as it's ancient?
That's relatively easy to do. And just to clarify something that was said earlier, we do actually have a new bulk water machine in the budget this year, but we're a little bit afraid that we might have under budgeted for that a little bit. It's budgeted at $60,000, which is a substantial investment. And if you recall the discussion we had about CIP priorities earlier, it did end up down towards the bottom as a result of that discussion. But clearly, if we're going to continue to supply bulk water, which we want to do, we're in the water sales business, we're going to need a new machine.
Yeah, and we got a new CIP coming up. So can address that there.
So I would ask that we have an opportunity for public comment on this. I know there are several people that have come to specifically comment on this.
Yeah, let's hear their options. What do they want to do? Sure. Turn over to the public. I'd like to hear what the bulk water users like to do.
Looks like we have a hand raised, Jody Goodman and then Sherelle.
Okay. Are they bulk water users?
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are bulk water users. We live up on Rock Flats Road, and we're told, I want to say May 26th, that it was shut down due to parts being ordered, which Bob has clarified those should be in this week. We use this water for our essential household use. All of us up here are on wells. We all put a significant amount of money into having our wells, and a lot of these wells have gone dry. A lot of them are very, very low producing wells. So we supplement our household use with that water. It's not watering our lawn. It's not, you know, even for farming for us, it's the water we run our house with, that I wash my dishes with, and we take our showers with. It is essential for us. And we are currently having to drive all the way to Fort Collins, which is an extensive amount of time away from our families, more gas money, all of that, not to mention, you know, we're not supporting the town we live in by doing that. And, you know, the lack of transparency we got from y'all is probably what really started this uproar. I mean, I was specifically told by Rachel in the office that it was a processing issue, that the board voted to continue the shutdown, and it would be until the end of summer. I made a post on the Wellington page, which is what got a lot of the people that are here involved, because then it was told by John Gator that no, the board hadn't voted and it was a parts issue. So we were pretty upset. There was a lot of lack of communication going back and forth on that. Since this meeting has gone on, some of that has been clarified. Bob did clarify that, you know, the parts coming in, but I don't feel like y'all are taking this seriously. And looking at these charts Dave Meyer has produced, I mean, this town has a big water issue. The plants, they're running at, you know, sustained demand problem here. You've got parts that maintenance should have been done 10 years ago. I mean, I want to know as a resident, this needs to be a major concern for y'all. I want to know moving forward what the town is going to do. You have a lot of growth. You have a lot of development, you know, coming up here, and looking at these charts, this is not it's not supported. And so this affects not only me because I'm rural and I need that bulk water station. I'm concerned, you know, my mom's a resident in town. Like, this isn't looking good for the people in the community. So as a board, I think y'all need to really take this seriously. Like, this is a big concern for everybody in the community. I think there's incentives you can come up with. How about zero scaping lawns? I mean, we are high desert now. But, you know, you want all this development in Wellington. We want to be this wonderful, beautiful community. How about some incentives for people zero scaping their lawns? Why, you know, why is landscaping and watering tomatoes not going to be, you know, a priority of shutting water down and making more restrictions on that versus people needing household water? So I want you to hear my voice and hear that this is not water we're using to, you know, use frivolously. This is our household water. It is essential for us. And it is not only inconvenient for us to go to Fort Collins, it is having an impact on how we live our lives. And, you know, we bought and moved in the town of Wellington. This is a rural community. Please don't forget us that are out here living on acreage out in your rural land. That is what was the draw for this community, for myself and a lot of other people. Please don't forget about us. Please take us seriously. There are other alternatives. There are other things that y'all can do as a board, vote on, make some incentives. I don't have all the answers, but zero scaping and incentives is certainly something that would be great. You admitted in this meeting that that was a large problem of where all the water is going. So the green lawns, I mean, we were in an HOA, we moved from Buffalo Creek out here to our acreage. So I know what it's like to own a subdivision home in Wellington and what the HOAs put on the lawns and everything. My mom's in another subdivision in one little brown patch and she's getting letters. So I'm just asking y'all, think about that, okay? Beautiful lawns are wonderful, but when you have residents in town who can't run their homes on water, we don't have drinking water, I can't run my dishwasher, I can't bathe my children. I mean, let's look at priorities, guys, please. I want you not to forget about us. There's a lot of us out here, and some of us are here tonight. There's a lot more who probably aren't here, but please don't forget about us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. We won't forget, we're on it. Anyone else?
Sherelle, you had your hand raised earlier. Did you still want to make a comment?
No, I am not a rural water. I don't want to take up your guys' time. If someone else wants to speak that's actually going
Yeah,
through.
I'd like to hear from bulk water. We had a lot of discussions on the other water, and we are taking this seriously, everybody. And it has been a long going problem. We are aware of it.
Well, Mayor Hammond, if she's a taxpayer, I would be interested to hear if she has an opinion on whether or not she'd be willing to sacrifice. You know, does she have an opinion on the taste in water or odor? So sure, I apologize, Mayor Hammond. So if I'm out of order here, you can move on. But I think that her comment.
No, I don't. I've got all the time. I'm good. I've got all the time in the world. Sherelle, why don't you weigh in on that?
I actually just zero scaped my yard.
Okay.
So that was against my HOA's probably rules, regulations. So I think that's a wonderful idea. I honestly do not mind sacrificing taste and smell if all of our residents are getting water, and that includes rural. We own a business. We actually take care of many customers that are rural. We get to hear a lot of what these people are dealing with on a daily basis. I get to enjoy fresh water in my home, and I just honestly, if it's something where someone's going to tell me I'm going to have an odd color, I've lived in Wellington for 19 years. I'm used to a little brown water in the bathtub. I'm still surviving with no major risks to my health that I understand. If you can bring these people water, I'm all for it. And I'm honestly saying, if you prepare the town people in advance and explain the reason why we're doing this is to help out our rural residents, I don't think you guys will get as much backlash.
I agree.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Okay.
Like we have another comment, raised hand from iPhone, and I don't know who that is. So if you're iPhone, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, that was probably me. I live out in Wellington, just about a mile west of Rawhide. We raise cattle, livestock, and we're greatly impacted by the shutdown of the bulk water station, just like Jody is. We rely on that water for household usage. We live on a gradually sloping hill out here. The hill is predominantly shale, so our well is 300 plus feet deep and produces 1 gallon an hour. So our well produces about 25 gallons a day, which is probably enough water to flush your toilets on an average household. So we, again, rely on that machine for household water usage, drinking water, shower water, everything else for the house.
What's the livestock get?
I'm sorry.
Do you have livestock?
Correct. So we raise a small quantity of livestock. We only live on 40 acres. We've got 5 head of livestock. We produce and sell the livestock, but it's on a very small quantity. So the primary use of our water is for household. Yes, I do water our livestock from the bulk dispensing machine, but it's a small usage compared to the water that we use for our household. So we moved to Wellington, obviously, like other residents, to become part of the agriculture community, produce livestock crops, and the bulk water dispensing machine shutdown has greatly affected us. We have to haul water from Fort Collins now, which I'm sure most residents either go to Fort Collins or Cheyenne, I believe, are the 2 nearest bulk dispensing machines.
Sir, for the record, would you mind providing your name and address? I just see I. So.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Tyler Walter, and I live at 18447 Bandana Lane. So I'm about a mile west of the power plant.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Looks like our next raised hand is JKA Meadows. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. I'm actually Tyler's neighbor, and we moved out here with a dream to kind of move out to the country, and we're unaware that our well had no water in it. Our well is 986 feet deep. We came from a family out in Kansas that you drilled 20 feet down, you had all the water in the world. So when we were told we had a well, we thought we had water. We were naive then, we're not now. But now this is our life, and it was already inconvenient to have to go to Wellington in the first place. But it became life, and we accepted it. We've been here 5 years now. But that is our only source of water. Our well produces almost nothing. It only produced 500 gallons a day 10 years ago. And it literally, I haul water about 3,000 gallons, so I'll make 3 trips. About 1,000 gallons a week is what we use. We have no lawn because we can't afford to water it. So we're naturally zero-scaped. But just please understand that, I try to check it with a stick to see how much water we have. And there's times when my teenage daughter is showering, it's 10 o'clock at night, and the water just turns off. And I have to go to Wellington to get water right then and there because we've run out. Now we have to go all the way to Fort Collins. Just please understand that us living out here, you have no water. That's so primitive to think in this day and age. And I want to also add that the price at the bulk water I find to be very inexpensive, and I would be more than willing to pay a higher rate for a better system that's more reliable and to have access to it. I have no issues with that. Fort Collins is double the price of you guys right now, not to mention the distance and diesel. And I would gladly pay that to have access to water. I'd also purchase a tap if water was ever even an option out this direction. We are Wellington residents, and we just feel like we've been forgot about in this, and I'm hoping our voices are getting through, and we hope you're listening, and I just thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Would anyone else like to make a comment? Otherwise, we will read what's in the chat box. So raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. Okay, I'll go through and read what we have in the chat box. This is from iPhone. Why is the town building a new high school, middle/residential development, new businesses when it can't handle its own current demand? The next comment is from Jason Meadows. It is hard to listen to your justification for high water consumption, which is the most definitely to new construction when existing residents who only water source is shut off. This is from Moyer. I believe that with the addition of the new businesses and structures, schools, etc., the town is supported by the contribution of fees and taxes that can actually help to support the needed infrastructure and improvements. My last comment was in reference to the iPhone comment. iPhone said, your chart readings are inaccurate. You stated the shutdown has slowed down consumption. The chart shows spikes and increase after you shut down. The next comment is from Jody Goodman. Back to my question from earlier. When is the new projected opening date for the water treatment plant? Second question, why is the town approving additional growth/development when it clearly cannot support its water wise? Please stop putting the cart before the horse and take care of your residents. The treatment plant should have been up and running sufficiently to avoid this situation. And yes, COVID has made it more of an issue, but y'all are cutting it way too close. Also, why the miscommunication? Many of us were specifically informed by the town offices that the bulk water station shutdown was board approved and would last until the end of summer. I was told this by Rachel in the office. Cheryl Teets, so what happens when businesses return to full and if school is back in? Cheryl Teets, the people who get this raw water use it for yard and livestock, or do they use it to have in-home water use? If the water is used for in-home use as means for only water source, how can we say no to bring water to our residents? Jason Meadows, yes, this is my only water source. Our well has run dry. I have a Wellington address and I am being denied a resource, very frustrating. Jarrell, this responsibility should be to all our taxpayers in Wellington, correct? Not just people who bought taps. iPhone, why is the bulk water dispensing machine the first to be shut down? Jody Goodman, it is, well, it is just the way Mayor Hammond said in regards to turning off the bulk water that can't be demand. Moyer, bulk water users should pay the same base rate as in town and home motors, making timing on access to bulk water a requirement, not a recommendation. Meadows, if option for taps were offered, many of us would purchase it. It's not just an option. Goodman, so the town has a big water use issue that needs to be addressed. How are you not taking this seriously? Running the plants with a sustained demand problem. Wow, guys. iPhone, we're paying taxes on water from the bulk water dispensing machine. It is critical emergency when town is denying residents water. Plant is running at maximum capacity. Or this is from Goodman, excuse me. Old plant design, old parts, machine must go, happened 10 years ago, said Mr. Gowing. Thank you, Ashley. You seem to be the only one taking this seriously. Meadows, does Fort Collins know you are sending residents there? Goodman, if you aren't going to upgrade the equipment, you need to have the parts that take 6+ weeks to come in on shelf somewhere so repairs are done in a timely fashion. iPhone, why is this problem being placed on the bulk water? Goodman, because these aren't addressing the town's problems. Look at Dave Meyer's chart. iPhone machine, that is not the problem. Look at your chart. JKA Meadows, John Jerome, why are city folks worth more than country folks? iPhone, the chart shows a massive spike in usage after the shutdown. Sherelle, I am okay with taste and smell being off if our residents can have access to drinking water. Goodman, you have other options. Offer incentives for xeriscaping their lawns. You admitted the water usage is largely due to this. I'm sure you can come up with some alternatives that don't deny Wellington residents essential household water, all for the bulk water station, as long as we can still water our tomatoes. Sure thing. Moyer, thank you all. Sherelle, I am not a raw water user. A comment from Trustee Kenny. Connect, Jody, thank you for your comments. Christy Cannon, Jody, well said. Thank you for your passion and comments. A comment from Trustee Gator. Goodman, thank you all. We are here. We are Wellington too. I will add the glad support for the rate increase at the bulk water station, as well as the time restrictions. Just please don't shut down the water station. Your first attempt to remedy is a much larger problem. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Jason. Very well. I appreciate y'all being here. And then a comment from Goodman. Thank you, Sherelle. That concludes the chat box.
That concludes public comment. Well, we all heard it. What are we going to do? We're going to turn this over to Bob, let him monitor it, manage the bulk water. You good with that?
I'm
I
good with
think
it.
he's the only person who can. I mean, this is not a policy
Got the
decision.
bullet points for Bob prior to public. I think we're good to go.
What now? Okay. I got the meeting back, Kelly, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So where are we at here now? I'm comfortable with letting Bob manage this thing. Our engineerings and I am comfortable with letting them manage this. I mean, we need to do a lot better job of getting messaging out, evidently, that's for sure. But I'm comfortable with them managing this bulk water. If they can turn it on and make it work, I'd like to do it.
They're the only ones that can manage it. I mean, we as a board can't manage it because the lag time is too. I mean, they need to be able to make instantaneous choices and follow through with them.
So
they can tell us about it after the fact, but
Right. So what are we here doing here now, right now?
I don't think there is any actionable item at this.
Okay.
My understanding, but my feedback would be this is we've already identified that outdoor watering, landscaping, those kind of things are the issues that are really driving our water usage right now. A lot of these things can be solved or improved through education pieces and motivation for our in-town water users. And then also restricting the use of construction users. So between those two things,
I think we shut the construction users off. I don't think I think they're bringing their own water. I think we've done that steps.
Correct. Yes. My concern is when we do turn on the bulk water again, as Bob mentioned, we're going to be still continuing to restrict, but so that they don't attempt to use the bulk water for construction.
No, it's just, yeah, that's right. That's true too.
So
just for residents. What else?
My recommendation is that we do a education and communication series on how to conserve water and as a follow-up to our water restrictions, continue to enforce those and encourage people to use those.
Would you like to head that up?
That's what's going to protect our bulk water users.
Would you like to head up that education piece and that sort of thing and see?
Mr. Mayor, that would be a staff role. I don't think that's appropriate for a trustee to take on.
Okay.
We did get authorization to hire a communications person. So depending on that timeline, that would be most appropriate for them. If that's something that's not.
I think realistically, we're not going to get that communications person on in time to do anything this summer. So we
Sure.
might need to supplement that somehow. If it's staff, then let's have staff do it.
Well, we're working
Um,
on it. We are all at max capacity, but if
I
that's
know.
something we would like to do, I'll find a way.
Well, I know, but the best we can, Kelly, the best we can, that's all. I know. What else?
I guess the biggest thing right now is we have to understand we're all in this together, and every resident of Wellington has to participate in order to make this work.
Yeah, okay,
That's my
okay. Anyone else?
We need
All
to
right, well-
acknowledge the water. We need to acknowledge the water rates for the bulk station when we acknowledge all the water rates. That's my
You
other
think?
suggestion.
Okay. Bob? Any final comments?
None. I'm hearing clearly that we need to communicate frequently and promptly any future changes that happen with our water supply system in general. And I think we appreciate the board's allowing us to manage this as needed in these kind of unprecedented times that we're in right now. So thanks much.
But can you milk us through for another 2 months?
You know, it's right now, it's not looking too bad. It's going to be an extended high heat, no rain period that's going to really put this to the test. So I know I'm doing my rain dance every time I get a chance. So
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to come back later with the communication, the surveys to the public, and they need to know that we are taking this serious, and we've been putting our time in, and we've been working on our water. We've been working on our treatment plant, and we've been putting scenarios and designs together. Not just been wasting time up here. There's a lot of people, a lot of smart people working on this, and we'll get that message across too. So if that's all we got tonight, I see a Larimer County Sheriff's Office monthly report. Sheriff Verner, is anything there that we need to bring up tonight?
Sorry,
okay.
I had to unmute myself. Nothing specific from that report that I
Okay.
recall.
All right. Well, I appreciate the report, sir, and service. Anything from the board members real quick?
I have one super quick thing, and I promise it will be quick, Troy, or Mayor Hammond. I just want to say publicly thank you to Bob and your team at Public Works. You guys are putting in big overtime with everything that's going on right now. I was just driving up 6th Street, and I noticed you guys patched that really awful hole we had in the road up there down by the hotel. So I really just want to let you guys know, I do notice the things you guys are doing, and I really want to let you know we appreciate the work you guys are putting in, especially with all of the stuff, especially on the water side. So I just want to say thank you guys, all of our town staff, but I specifically do want to highlight our Public Works. I appreciate the work that you guys are doing.
I wanted to piggyback on that. So in addition to Public Works, you know, making our town run, having water, all the operations and maintenance of the water plant that are going on right now. In addition to that, there's been some kind of extracurricular activities that I like to think of, and that's the delivery of the tables to the businesses recently, which I've been enjoying and feeling much more safe partaking in these businesses by being able to sit outside and be social distance. So I really appreciate that of the crosswalks, the crosswalk signs, the service-mounted signs. I really appreciate that. I know that that is a work than was scheduled or planned. So I appreciate that time that you all put into that. In addition to that, I did want to put a thank you out to the Main Streets program that did a cleanup initiative. I saw people out there sweating and working, so I really appreciate that. And then I also wanted to give a formal welcome to Crystal and thank you. You've been doing fantastic work already, and we appreciate you so much.
Anyone else? Kelly, you still there?
Nope, I'm not here anymore.
Okay.
I signed off.
I know.
I was just gonna end the meeting for all. I got that
I
power.
know. Hey, thank you for you and Tyler and everybody working hard. I know you're strapped. I know you're lean. Let us know what we can do. okay?
Will do.
'Cause we're all here, all right? Guys, have a nice evening. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.